Chapter 2181, Life and Death Extinction. Because he possessed the ability to summon the power of the demon god's tomb, Deepchild's speed reached the limit. Using the space laws, he was nearly able to teleport. He arrived in front of the magic cube in an instant. Stretched out his demon claws, he wrapped them in the potential of the world and grasped out at the magic cube. Lin Ming. Seeing this, Xiang Mei was worried and frantic. Zhou was hiding in the magic cube space. If the magic cube were violently shaken, would something happen to Zhou? Lin Ming's heart skipped a beat. But at this time he didn't have any ability to support the magic cube anymore. Just before now he had poured all of his strength into it and all he could do was place his faith in it. Gotcha! The magic cube forcefully worked itself loose from Deepchild's claws and smashed into the demon pagoda's gates once more. The gates violently trembled, cracks began to appear. Guangdong! The sound of rattling chains echoed out from behind the gates, as if some terrifying existence was trying to break free from its cage. Damn it! Deepchild roared, panic-stricken. He grasped out at the magic cube again. But at this time, an incredibly cold soul impact shot out from the gates of the demon pagoda like a sharp sword and pierced in between Deepchild's eyebrows. The world potential around him scattered, nearly completely dispersing. Pang! The magic cube smashed into the gates of the demon pagoda a fourth time. The crackers spread even further. Soon after, a fifth strike and sixth strike followed. Lin Ming had poured the totality of his strength into the magic cube, and now the gates of that demon pagoda had finally begun to be pushed open. Lin Ming and Xiang Mei held their breath, staring at the slowly opening gates of the demon pagoda. As for Deepchild, his complexion was immeasurably ugly. I never imagined that in the final moments of my life, I would be able to see the descendant to the stone of eternal life as well as the extension of my life that I poured my bloodline into. A vast and ancient voice flooded out, as if it emerged from the ends of time. The voice spread into the ears, arousing a faint sympathetic soul resonance. This sound was no longer some simple order of the laws, but a sound equal to the great Tao itself. Dawn! Dawn! With heavy footsteps that were accompanied by the sounds of chains dragging along the ground, a disheveled figure with scattered hair emerged from the demon pagoda. This figure wasn't tall and his entire body was wrapped in black robes. His black robes were dilapidated, his body was wrapped in iron chains, and he even seemed distressed. But, beneath his long and loosely scattered hair were a pair of eyes that seemed as if they contained the cosmos. Lin Ming sucked in a light breath. He had fatally guessed just who this character was. To cause the magic cube to tremble, to be able to summon Xiang Mei's innermost soul, as well as someone that would be sealed into the 33-level demon pagoda, Lin Ming could only think of one person. That was the former master of the magic cube, the one with a significant relationship to Xiang Mei, the one who created the Holy Scripture, Immortal Sovereign. And now, it seemed that Immortal Sovereign had truly died. Lin Ming knew that if the Immortal Sovereign appeared in the Emperor Bone Sea, that meant he had originally died and then was sealed within the demon pagoda. All that remained was his remnant soul. At this time, Xiang Mei held her breath beside Lin Ming, her eyes gazing unblinkingly at this man before her. As she looked at him, she felt as if her soul was shivering. It was impossible for her to compose herself right now. She faintly felt as if the riddle to her life was about to open up before her. Immortal Sovereign looked deeply at Xiang Mei and then quietly sighed, "This is fate," he lightly said. It was impossible to tell what the meaning was behind his words. Immortal. Deepchild's blood-red eyes stared stubbornly at Immortal Sovereign who had suddenly appeared. His expression blazed with dire killing intent. From panic and horror at the start, to afterwards when the demon pagoda gates opened and Immortal Sovereign appeared, Deepchild instead began to calm down until he became icy cold. You were indeed a world-shaking existence before, but you have long since died and all that remains of you is a wisp of remnant soul that was sealed in that demon pagoda by demon-trapping ropes for 10 billion years. How much strength could you possibly have left over? So tell me, how is the taste of being sealed away? Deep Child fiercely grinned as he rapidly analyzed the difference in strength between Immortal Sovereign and himself. The name of Immortal Sovereign was truly a great deterrence. Yet what stood in front of Deep Child was nothing but a remnant soul. Moreover, he could also control the world strength of the demon god's tomb. In truth, if he had to compare them, then Immortal Sovereign wasn't necessarily any stronger than he was. The more Deep Child analyzed the situation, the more his confidence rose. I advise you to be a good little dog and roll back into that demon ceiling pagoda. Otherwise, once my master personally arrives, he will place your soul in the Great Soul Refining Array formation and allow you to experience infinite tortures over thousands and millions of years. Hearing Deep Child's threat, Immortal Sovereign thought little of it. He only gently smiled and lightly said, "The vicissitudes of the world truly change in a myriad of ways. To think that there would be a day when a mere dog would bark in front of me like this. Not to mention you, even your master who raised such a dog wouldn't dare say such words to me. If he were actually able to completely control this land, he would already have obtained immortal and everlasting life. Just what garbage are you saying?" Immortal Sovereign's contemptuous words caused Deep Child to fume with anger. He suddenly flourished his trident, world potential crazily gathering towards him. "Go back into your demon ceiling pagoda," Deep Child cried out, thrusting his trident at Immortal Sovereign. But at this time, Immortal Sovereign also moved. He lifted his palms straight up and then pushed them towards Deep Child. Bang! The world potential surrounding Deep Child suddenly scattered. Not only that, but the world potential formed a storm that howled towards Immortal Sovereign. The world potential became a hurricane that spun around Immortal Sovereign, all of it controlled by him. The world potential was instead used by Immortal Sovereign. How is this possible? Let alone Deep Child, even Lin Ning and Shang Mei were completely dumbfounded. The strength of the world should be controlled by Deep Child, but now control had fallen into Immortal Sovereign's hands. Was this a mistake of the Soul Emperor's? How could he possibly have made such an error? Immortal Sovereign didn't bother giving an explanation. He simply thrust out a palm. This palm contained not just the potential of the world but also the life and death law concepts of Immortal Sovereign. Life and death extinction. A wild and brutal strength rushed out and Deep Child was locked in by the world potential. For Deep Child, who was used to controlling the world potential and sentencing others to life and death, this was the first time that this strength had been turned against him instead. Now, he finally felt the sorrow and despair of facing the strength of an entire world. Wah! Immortal Sovereign's strength came shrouding down. Deep Child sent out a horrified scream and his body violently shivered. Horror and panic burst out from his eyes as well as thick disbelief. His life force began to rapidly fade away. His mortal body withered and his eyes sank into their sockets. His hair began to fade like wilted grass. With death knocking on his door, Deep Child was frightened beyond compare. When it came to death, he felt deep dread. He couldn't believe that he would die here. "Impossible, you are already dead. How can a dead man possibly kill me?" In this world, there are far too many impossible things that occur, but in fact, every impossibility is reasonable and fair, and the so-called impossible is merely something that exists in a person's heart. Saying these final words, Immortal Sovereign clenched his hands. Deep Child's mortal body completely rotted away into a bag of meat and bones that tumbled to the ground. A wisp of remnant soul rose out from these bones. This was Deep Child's remnant soul. The laws in the Emperor Bone Sea were extremely unique. As long as anyone died here, whether they were an abyssal or not, they would leave behind a remnant soul that would be sealed here forever. Immortal Sovereign saw this remnant soul and reached out a hand, using the potential of the world to completely imprison it. The remnant soul emitted an ear-piercing scream. And at this time, the magic cube flew towards the remnant soul on its own initiative. A black vortex formed and swallowed up Deep Child's remnant soul. From start to finish, the fight continued for less than 5 breaths of time before everything was brought to a conclusion. Immortal Sovereign had used a single move of life and death extinction to eradicate a deep child. At this time, Lin Ming was mind-boggled. This was the strength of a beyond divinity powerhouse? Although he had died, with only a wisp of remnant soul remaining, and even though he had been sealed away for 10 billion years, he still had such incredibly abnormal levels of strength. The difference between them was as great as the heavens and earth. As Immortal Sovereign saw Lin Ming smile, he gently smiled and said, "There is no need for you to be surprised. I am far from being as formidable as you imagine." This dead abyssal was correct, and I indeed don't have much of my strength remaining. All that I am is a wisp of remnant soul. If I were to fight in the outside world, then I could just barely manage to compare to a peak true divinity. Chapter 2182, The Life of a Hero. Peak true divinity? Lin Ming was startled. He slightly felt that Deep Child's strength had already reached the standard of a peak true divinity, but when Immortal Sovereign killed Deep Child as easily as if he were slaughtering a chicken, he also had the strength of a peak true divinity. Immortal Sovereign shook his head. When I killed this abyssal, the truth was that I drew support from the strength of this world. In terms of controlling the strength of this world, he was inferior to me in this aspect, and thus all his advantages became his disadvantages when facing me. Otherwise, killing him would not have been easy. Immortal Sovereign's words stirred Lin Ming's thoughts. He could feel that a moment ago, Immortal Sovereign had also controlled the potential of the world, and the depths of his control were even greater than Deep Child's. This was an inconceivable concept to Lin Ming. It was like the Soul Emperor had sharpened a saber, but in the end the weapon had been taken by the enemy. He was planning to ask Immortal Sovereign how he had accomplished this, but he actually held back, because at this time he noticed that Immortal Sovereign's gaze was completely focused on Xiang Mei. In front of this man, Xiang Mei held her breath, her mind wildly shaking. The sense of calling in her heart had become increasingly intense ever since this man appeared, and the flow of blood within her seemed to accelerate with it. This caused Xiang Mei to suspect that she shared a blood connection with this man. She lightly bit her lips, withstanding the throbbing of her heart as she stared at this black-robed man, the two of them gazing at each other for a long time. "Are you my ancestor?" The quiet question was filled with hesitation, uncertainty, as well as a hidden undercurrent of excitement. Ever since knowing of the mystery that surrounded her life, this knowledge had been a rock that pressed down against her heart. And today, she finally had a chance to push this stone away, so how could she possibly remain calm at such a time? "Ancestor?" The black-robed man muttered to himself and then sighed. Emotions began to emerge on his face. 10 billion years ago, Azura and I were the respective leaders of the demonic path and the righteous path. But, the truth is that being righteous or demonic is simply relatively speaking. Because I perceived the samsara of life and death and chased after eternal life, my road deviated towards the righteous path, but because Azura killed too much, he was more inclined towards the demonic path. This is also where his name Azura comes from. Originally, there was never any sense of agreement between me and Azura, and this sense of disagreement came from our conflicting philosophies of martial arts. You can even say that our principles ran counter to each other. In the world of martial arts, a conflict in ideas is a contradiction that is incredibly difficult to reconcile. Because of this, our disciples and followers fought against each, and me and Azura even battled several times. But afterwards, we both pursued a peerless woman together, and this caused our originally ingrained contradictions to develop towards a rivalry of life and death. In the end, that woman chose me, and this caused both sorrow and anger to rise within Azura. Yet, because that woman made her choice, he no longer came to fight with me and instead silently left. After Azura left, he devoted the entirety of his time, his energy, his life, everything into his cultivation. As for me, I dual cultivated life and death with my wife, me focusing on death, and she focusing on life. But afterwards, I discovered that I had been cast off by Azura. When I met Azura again after so many years of having been apart, his hair had become as white as snow. Thinking back to it, I fear his strength stood equal to me and my wife joining forces. If it weren't for the invasion of the Dark Abyss, I fear that Azura and I might simply have been ex-enemies for the rest of our lives. While being strangers to each other, but also the ones that understood the other the most. The appearance of the Dark Abyss showed us that there was a heavens beyond the heavens. I fought with Azura for so many years and never imagined that the universe would undergo a great shattering in the future, and as for this abyssal race, they had already experienced it for themselves. With our 10 billion years of martial arts civilization, we fought the accumulated strength of the abyssal race's 100 billion years of martial arts inheritances. You can probably already imagine the result. In that war, the ancient races of the 33 heavens suffered countless casualties. The only good news is that I joined forces with Azura to give the abyssal demon god a severe wound that would be difficult to recover from, thus giving the ancient races of the 33 heavens a chance of reprieve. However, the price we paid for that was even deeper. Azura was gravely wounded, and I was dying. Although the offensive of the abyss slowed down to a crawl, I knew that if this continued onwards the 33 heavens would eventually be destroyed. And at that time it was nearly impossible for me to recover. Without my support, the battlefield would suffer disaster after disaster. And it was at this time that I discovered my wife was pregnant. Because my body was flooded with death and the laws of annihilation, it was incredibly difficult for me to ever have children. But the heavens didn't abandon me. In the final moments of my life, they granted me this child. I knew that my time was coming to an end. So, I poured the essence of my life and my feelings of the samsara of life and death into this child, hoping that she could inherit my everything in the future. From this sense, it could be said that she was no longer my child, but a continuation of my life and my wife's life. I watched the birth of my daughter. But at that time, I had less than half a year of life remaining. I did not wish to quietly pass away in the final moments of my life, so I left the ancient races and planned to launch a suicide attack against the supreme headquarters of the abyssal demons. I intended to use the waning moments of my life to explode myself and cause heavy damage to the demon god once more. But at this time, I never even saw the demon god at all. I fell into an encirclement of millions and billions of abyssals, and in the end I perished together with a totem-level abyssal. I thought that I had died, but I never imagined that I still had a wisp of remnant soul remaining. When my consciousness slowly returned, I found that I had been sealed in this demon pagoda, and it was only afterwards that I also learned the great secret of the demon god's tomb. Immortal Sovereign slowly described the past. Although his tone was light, the matters he spoke of were earth-shaking. It was hard for Lin Ming to imagine just what kind of life this was. For the first half of his life he fought with Azura, the leader of the demonic path, and even won against him the love of the most peerless woman to exist in the world. For the second half of his life, he fought in a great war against the abyssals and heavily wounded the demon god. Even when he was severely wounded and on the precipice of death, he still chose to end his life by engaging in brutal slaughter with billions of abyssals and even perishing together with a totem-level abyssal. What was a hero? This was it. At this time, Shang Mei slowly knelt to the ground in front of Immortal Sovereign. Her heart had already been touched. Before Immortal Sovereign, she gave a deep bow. The man that stood in front of her was her past life's father. He didn't only die in battle for the sake of the races of the 33 heavens, but he even passed on his final life essence and his awareness of the laws to her. As she thought of the sorrow of her father's life, Shang Mei's eyes were already wet with tears. Immortal Sovereign had placed far too much hope and effort into Shang Mei's previous life. And this hope was actually an immense pressure. The past life Shang Mei had also experienced a similarly sad destiny. Shang Mei vaguely recalled the scenes from the Heart Demon Dreamland. She recalled that when her past life was but a child, she had begun hellish training. With a sword that was even longer than she was tall, she crazily fought with the abyssals, suffering wave after wave of endless demons. But during these brutal battles, there had always been an old primal god raceman standing beside her, and although he seemed callous and indifferent, the truth was that he had been carefully looking after her the entire time. She recalled being stranded on an isolated island, facing the rough impact of the sea waves and the cold iron chains digging into her flesh and blood, leaving her suffocating in pain. She suffered from despair and loneliness until she gathered enough strength to break free from these chains. She recalled growing into an adult and arriving on the battlefield where she fought with countless abyssal demons. This slaughter continued without end, and in the final moments, she underwent one final blood sacrifice to become the incarnation of the eternal Godwall and seal away the dark abyss. From the moment of her birth, the story of her life had already been written. That was to live for battle, to die for battle. She might have been tragic, might have been glorious, might have been nothing at all. But she knew that there was nothing glorious or grand at all in the war between the ancient races and the abyssals. This was a war for survival, and if they failed, what awaited them was utter annihilation. 10 billion years ago, countless elites of the primal god race pushed forwards and died without any sense of fear, all in order to obtain a path to survival. Chapter 2183, World Spirit. The meaning between Immortal Sovereign and Shang Mei greatly touched Lin Ming. 10 billion years ago, the ancient races had been inferior to the abyssals in strength, and yet they managed to survive and continue onwards. When a race approached extinction, the hot-blooded bravery and faith that erupted from within them could be extremely terrifying, just like on New Ming Planet when Lin Ming saw 100,000 starving citizens not reaching for food if it meant giving up their pride. When a people were desperate and unafraid of death, their feelings would infect others much more easily. And once the hearts of trillions and quadrillions of martial artists gathered together, then even if facing an enemy 10 times greater than they were, they could still fight. Thinking of this, Lin Ming let out a heavy breath. For these past years he had felt a great pressure on his shoulders. Yet, he didn't fight alone, he never had. The great calamity had arrived too quickly. Although he had yet to grow, he didn't need to face the secret master of the demon god's tomb alone. He had comrades, friends, seniors, and countless similar martial artists who also fought to survive. Looking at the expression on Lin Ming's face and the faith and belief that lit up his eyes, Immortal Sovereign faintly smiled. He said, "Come with me." As Immortal Sovereign spoke, he turned to move towards the dark altars. Lin Ming and Shang Mei followed behind without question. Immortal Sovereign stepped onto a dark altar, and Lin Ming and Shang Mei followed onto it. As Lin Ming stood atop this massive altar for the first time, he could see motley brown marks scattered over the top, the blood of countless beings that had sprinkled to the ground over the immeasurably long years. Atop the altar was also that seemingly eternally unchanging demon relief. The exposed demon patterns and demon's body also seemed particularly ferocious. Immortal Sovereign arrived at the center of the dark altar before stopping. "Senior, you are?" Lin Ming asked, a bit perplexed. He had always been vigilant against this altar. He could feel a rich and deep infernal energy from it. Countless heaven-gifted elites had died here over the years. Immortal Sovereign turned around and looked at Lin Ming and Shang Mei. A kind smile appeared on his face. "The original reason you came to the demon god's tomb was for this abyssal ritual, wasn't it? Since you've come this far, of course you shouldn't miss out." "Senior, what do you mean?" Lin Ming was surprised. The abyssal ritual was supposedly nothing but a great trap. Could Immortal Sovereign have a way of avoiding the dangers of the trap? Immortal Sovereign said, "With me managing the abyssal ritual, there is nothing for you to worry about. I will erase that old fellow's divine sense for you." Listening to Immortal Sovereign's words, Lin Ming was bewildered. Even after having been dead for so many years, Immortal Sovereign still possessed such abilities? Immortal Sovereign was able to see through Lin Ming's thoughts. He chuckled. "There is no need for you to be so surprised. The strength of the world that is in the Emperor Bone Sea was left behind by me as well as the countless ancient powerhouses that perished here. The strength of this world is originally our strength, and the reason that Old Freak is able to control the strength of this world is because he uses an array formation as well as these 363 demon pagodas. During my 10 billion years stay here, I managed to perceive some of the laws, so it's normal for me to take control of this strength that belonged to me to begin with. In truth, that old dog has never been able to fully control the Emperor Bone Sea. Besides me that died here, there are also elites of the 33 heavens and ancient demon race demon emperors. None of these people were weak before their deaths, and even the weakest amongst them was at the upper true divinity level. So, how could these existences ever willingly resign themselves to being imprisoned here and becoming nourishment for the demon god's tomb? If that old freak ever manages to somehow grasp complete control over the Emperor Bone Sea, then perhaps he will truly fulfill his ambitions of becoming immortal and everlasting. Listening to Immortal Sovereign's words, Lin Ming became aware of what was occurring. That's right, the hidden manipulator of the demon god's tomb had plotted and schemed for the last 100 billion years, committing countless sins to conceal the true goal of the demon god's tomb. This secret manipulator had concocted all sorts of lies and rumors to imprison hundreds of ancient great emperors in the demon pagodas. How could these great emperors willingly allow themselves to be used by others? If these hundreds of peerless characters joined forces, then even if the secret manipulator of the demon god's tomb had all sorts of array formations and magic tools at his disposal, wanting to fully control this Emperor Bone Sea still wouldn't be easy. Lin Ming recalled when he first entered the Emperor Bone Sea. He remembered those manic voices and the remnant demon souls wildly hurling themselves against the front gates of the demon pagodas, causing them to violently tremble. It was clear that every day was agonizingly painful for these remnant souls. In truth, this also made sense. Due to the functions of the special laws that existed here, these ancient great emperors remained alive in perpetuity within the demon pagodas, and could even continue onwards for at least dozens upon dozens of billions of years if not longer. Yet, for all this time they were imprisoned in the demon pagodas that were nothing but tiny cages. No matter how firm their will was and no matter how determined they were, it was also difficult for them to withstand this endless loneliness that seemed as if it would never end. Such long suffering could make one go crazy. Lin Ming asked, "The old fellow that Senior speaks of, is that the creator of the demon god's tomb, the demon god?" Lin Ming long since had this guess in his mind. Now, it seems that the Soul Emperor was the secret manipulator behind the demon god's tomb. This was the most reasonable guess and the guess that made the most sense. But whether or not the Soul Emperor was the demon god who created the demon god's tomb in the past was still an unknown. If the Soul Emperor was the demon god, then that was truly terrifying. If so, then when the Soul Emperor created the demon god's tomb in the past, he already had the ambition of fulfilling his goal of immortal life. The demon god's tomb had not only helped the ancient demon race survive the Great Shattering, but it was also used for the demon god to realize his ambitions of immortality. If so, then this plot that was laid out for at least 150 billion years was truly a great conspiracy. Just thinking about it left one shuddering. However, facing this question, Immortal Sovereign actually lightly shook his head. "You ask me this, but even I do not know. For all these years, with my understanding of the demon god's tomb, what I feel is the most likely truth is that when the demon god's tomb was first established, its true and original goal was to withstand the shattering. But afterwards, the nature of the demon god's tomb changed. As for the secret manipulator that made use of the demon god's tomb, it could be the demon god, a descendant of the demon god, or even some incredibly fierce and ambitious existence that appeared after some time in the dark abyss. As for the greatest possibility, I believe that the so-called secret manipulator is actually a spiritual wisdom birthed from the infinite years of evolution of the demon god's tomb." As the Immortal Sovereign said this final possibility, Lin Ming's heart chilled. A world had evolved its own spiritual wisdom, and this spiritual wisdom wanted to exist forever, to become the ruler of the universe, to have all life forms in existence become its slaves? This sounded unbelievable, but upon further thinking about it, there was such a possibility. The demon god's tomb was a special world designed to survive the great shattering of the universe. This was originally something that violated the heavenly Tao. So, if everything defied the heavenly Tao to begin with, what was strange about a world producing its own spiritual wisdom and wanting to enslave all of creation? If this were true, then the evil bone that he found from the underground mystic realm could be explained. Lin Ming's original assumption was that this evil bone was kept by the Soul Emperor in order to revive his mortal body. If so, this bone was incredibly important and it wouldn't make sense for him to somehow stumble his way into obtaining it. Now, it seemed that this bone was left behind by some ancient beyond divinity existence. This evil bone was nourished in the demon god's tomb array formation, and likely used to stabilize the array formation or to provide energy to the world of the demon god's tomb. Most of the arrangements and rules in the demon god's tomb were to nourish the world itself, because the Soul Emperor was likely the spirit of the world. No wonder the Soul Emperor wanted to obtain my eternal soul, because he is a soul form to begin with, and the eternal soul might be able to help him consolidate his soul form until he reaches immortality. Like this, his control of the remnant souls of the ancient emperors in the demon god's tomb will become that much greater over time. Lin Ming felt his thoughts become increasingly clear. But, understanding these things didn't have much meaning. In fact, even knowing the origin of the Soul Emperor wasn't too significant. All he needed to know was that, only by defeating this old freak could the races of the 33 heavens, as well as himself and everyone he knew of, possibly survive. Lin Ming said, "Senior might not know, but that old freak has already seized the body of the 33 heavens Soul Emperor, and is now the leader of the Spiritas. And, the Spiritas are one of the largest races in the 33 heavens. That old fellow has already infiltrated his way into the 33 heavens and has even trained many minions for his own use. Even that deep child that Senior killed just now was one of them. And, Junior feels deeply ashamed, but even when facing a mere dog that was raised, I still didn't have the strength to fight back." Immortal Sovereign thought little of it. The abyssal I killed just now had used some sort of contract to borrow that old fellow's ability to control the strength of the world here. For you to lose to him in this world is reasonable. And, my ability to control the strength of this world is superior to that abyssal's, so killing him was easy for me. This is why you must remember that in the future, never fight that old fellow in the demon god's tomb. Here, he is no different from a divine god. Only by us several hundred ancient remnant souls combining can we contend with him for a brief moment. The only exception is, if you possess the ability to rip apart the world of the demon god's tomb. If so, you can break the foundation of that old fellow's strength. Rip apart the world of the demon god's tomb? Lin Ming was dazed. This was a world that even the Great Shattering was unable to destroy. Wasn't wanting to rip it apart easier said than done? Chapter 2184, Abyssal Ritual. When Lin Ming stood in the center of the dark altar, he could feel his divine soul connect through the altar and commune with the entire Emperor Bonesi. He faintly felt this world and the strength that flowed through it. Originally, this so-called abyssal ritual is to accept a baptism of the strength of the Emperor Bonesi's world. The Soul Emperor wants to completely control the Emperor Bonesi and fuse together with the demon god's tomb, but he lacks the soul force to achieve this. Thus, he laid out all sorts of plans to accomplish it. He needed powerful minions for his plans, so he divided a portion of the Emperor Bonesi's strength to the peak talents of the Dark Abyss, training them into totem-level abyssals that he could control himself. If I withstand a baptism of the Emperor Bonesi's world but am not controlled by the Soul Emperor, then that is the same as slicing off a piece of meat from the Soul Emperor's body. After understanding this, Lin Ming was somewhat worried. These actions would be the same as touching the Soul Emperor's reverse scale. Could it lead to disastrous consequences? Senior, could the Soul Emperor personally come to the demon god's tomb in his anger? If the Soul Emperor arrived, then the consequences would be inconceivable. Immortal Sovereign said, "When I killed Deep Child, I called upon the remnant souls here to use the strength of the world to block out the Emperor Bonesi. That old fellow is currently in total seclusion, so whether it is any changes that occur here or Deep Child's death, it won't be easy for him to realize it." As Immortal Sovereign spoke, he pointed to the magic cube in Lin Ming's hands. Deep Child's remnant soul is already inside. Lin Ming then remembered that when Immortal Sovereign killed Deep Child's soul had been left behind and then taken in and suppressed by the magic cube. the laws in the Emperor Bone Sea were extremely special. When a martial artist died, their soul wouldn't scatter away. In fact, this could be said to be living in a state between life and death. And a method to know if someone was living or dead was to keep a wisp of their life soul as a signaling mark. However, if Deep Child's soul didn't scatter, then the wisp of their life soul wouldn't vanish, and thus it would be difficult to find out about his death. If the Soul Emperor was paying attention to the situation, then he naturally would have methods to discover this. But Lin Ming was aware that the Soul Emperor was currently in seclusion. Moreover, this was an extremely critical part of his seclusion. In all likelihood, the Soul Emperor was using his eternal soul as some sort of catalyst to refine some secret soul skill, finally allowing him to completely control the Emperor Bone Sea. For the Soul Emperor, this was a matter of the utmost importance because it concerned realizing his ambitions of everlasting immortality. If he wanted to do all this without distraction, then it would be difficult to focus on things happening in the outside world. As Lin Ming was thinking, Immortal Sovereign said to Shang Mei, "You also stand." Shang Mei nodded and stood beside Lin Ming. At this time, the strength of the world began to surge about them. The entire Emperor Bone Sea seemed to animate around Lin Ming and Shang Mei. Across the shores of the Yellow Springs River, over 100 demon pagodas began to shiver. Who dares to disturb my rest? Suddenly, an ancient spiritual sense lashed out like a thunderclap in Lin Ming and Shang Mei's ears. Kill! 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 Fight! 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 Another spiritual sense reverberated outwards. Flesh and blood! Give me flesh and blood! A frenzied voice cried out in Lin Ming's ears. This was the soul of a wild beast, one filled with demented anger and fierce slaughtering intent. I want to die. Who can kill me? There is actually a woman, a fresh and beautiful woman. I haven't tasted a woman for tens of billions of years. Give me. Give me. Bang. 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 A demon crazily smashed into the gates of a demon pagoda. From a slit in the gates, a fierce but withered claw stretched out. Chaotic spiritual senses gushed out for a time, filled with endless hope and maddening bestial desires as they rushed towards Lin Ming and Shang Mei like a tide. Lin Ming and Shang Mei weren't prepared for this to occur at all, so they were slightly startled. However, they immediately revolved their spiritual seas and soul force erupted to block out these spiritual senses. Otherwise, if these spiritual senses were to break into their spiritual seas, there would be a chance they would be assimilated by these beast-like spiritual senses and lose their minds. All of you shut up! With a loud shout, Immortal Sovereign's words cracked like lightning. This voice formed a shockwave that radiated outwards. Bang! The over 100 demon pagodas seemed to shake simultaneously. The originally discordant cackle of sounds vanished and the remnant souls calmed down. Immortal! 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 Several demons diabolically shouted. Their voices echoed through the Emperor Bone Sea, broad and cold. You actually managed to leave the demon pagoda? How useless! You still cannot escape the law bindings of the Emperor Bone Sea. Here, we cannot beg for life or beg for death. You will never leave. Hearing these curse-like words, Immortal Sovereign's complexion remained as usual. He only lifted his palms and pushed them outwards. Bang! The strength of the world formed a massive wave that swept towards the 100-plus demon pagodas. The demon pagodas wildly shook, as if a storm appeared in the Emperor Bone Sea. The remnant souls of the demons were sealed in the demon pagodas and couldn't be harmed by such actions. But, the vast strength that erupted from Immortal's body was enough to frighten and shock many demons. Contribute your world strength. Immortal's voice reverberated in the air along with the storm, his expression one that brooked no refusal. Why? Demons clamored together. Why should I listen to you? Give me that woman and I will consider it. The abyssal ritual was a powerful ceremony that would give birth to a totem-level abyssal. But, totem-level abyssals were existences at the limit of true divinity, and they were much stronger than the current immortal sovereign and his remaining remnant soul. With immortal sovereign strength, it was impossible for him to mobilize the tremendous amount of energy required to baptize Xiang Mei and Lin Ming. Thus, he had to draw support from the other remnant demon souls in the Emperor Bone Sea. On the basis of these two people standing here, don't you wish you could tear the controller of the abyss to shreds, drink his blood and eat his flesh? You are all nothing but pigs and dogs reared here in cages, waiting for him to butcher you with a knife. When do you think your obsessions will ever come true? Immortal Sovereign spoke slowly, but his words carried a powerful vibration that wildly surged outwards. Ha 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 ha. A remnant demon soul suddenly raucously laughed. What nonsense are you spouting? Are you thinking that this man and woman that are no different from little kittens are going to be able to defeat that old freak? Did I hear wrong? You want us to contribute our world strength to undergo a baptism for these two little things? Ha 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 ha. They are Empyreans. Not even true divinities. You have been sealed away for 10 billion years and now you've gone crazy. Many demons wildly laughed. They were originally wild and rebellious individuals, and after being sealed away for tens of billions of years, their hearts were filled with hostility. Moreover, they didn't belong to the same race that Immortal came from. Even if they had a common enemy in the Soul Emperor, wanting them to obey without question was easier said than done. Immortal slightly frowned. He looked at Lin Ming and asked, "Are you confident you can pass the abyssal ritual?" Immortal had witnessed the battle between Lin Ming and Deep Child. When Deep Child was supported by the strength of the world, he possessed strength above that of an upper true divinity. Yet, Lin Ming with his peak upper Empyrean cultivation was able to battle Deep Child for dozens of breaths of time without dying. This level of strength had left Immortal Sovereign shocked. As for Xiang Mei, although she was a little worse than Lin Ming, she was still the reincarnation of his daughter. Her strength and talent were beyond a shadow of a doubt. Thus, Immortal Sovereign was confident in allowing them to withstand the trial of the abyssal ritual and challenge the nearly invincible Soul Emperor. If it is only a test of potential, then there is no problem at all, Lin Ming calmly stated. In truth, potential was equivalent to talent. The most visible and intuitive way to judge this was to measure a person's overall combat strength in comparison to their age. In this aspect, no one could surpass Lin Ming. And if it is at an even higher, more difficult level? A flash of light burst out from Immortal Sovereign's eyes. Lin Ming was startled, but he still clenched his teeth and said, "I can give it a try." If the abyssal ritual rose by yet another degree of difficulty, it was hard to imagine what it would be like. But, if he wanted to defeat the Soul Emperor, then he needed to push himself to the edge and go beyond his limits. Good. A light of appreciation flashed in Immortal Sovereign's eyes. He took a deep breath and turned around, facing the many crazed demons. He said, "If any of you doubt me, then you can pour your strongest strength here and see if they can withstand it." Immortal Sovereign's words left many demons shocked. Within the Emperor Bone Sea, everything suddenly quieted down. Chapter 2185, To the Heart's Content. You want us to pour our strongest strength into the bodies of these two Empyrean juniors? Hee, Immortal, do you think you're dreaming? If we pour the strength of our hundredsome soul forms into this boy and girl, it will cause their bodies to explode. Ha ha ha. Immortal, you might have some grudge with these two babies, but there isn't a need to use such cruel methods to torture them. After several breaths of quiet, many demons began to howl in laughter. The abyssal ritual was an excruciatingly painful process, and the greater the intensity of energy, the greater the pain that followed it. If one couldn't withstand the impact of energy, then their body would blow up. This method of death was at least 100 times more painful than death by being torn apart. Moreover, after dying their soul would also be sealed here. However, they wouldn't be sealed in the demon pagodas but beneath a great array formation beneath the Emperor Bone Sea. In that crowded and dark array formation, being caged up in that sort of environment would cause one to go even crazier than if they were locked up in a demon pagoda. Immortal Sovereign remained unmoved. He coldly sneered and said, "You are already dead, so what is the point of keeping your energies? If you still have a slim hope of being able to revive someday, then I advise you to stop dreaming. However, I believe that even if you pour the greatest amount of world strength that you have in your body, you still won't be able to fill these two juniors up. There is no need for you to stir us up, Immortal. If you want to reduce these two juniors to ashes, then let me help you." A demon fiendishly laughed. But just as this demon was about to act, a series of even more shrill laughs echoed out. "Jejejage. Yuan Qi, pass this matter over to us brothers instead." As this voice finished speaking, it focused on Immortal and said, "Aren't you confident in these two little babies? Good, then us brothers will act on that boy. We will pour in our greatest energies, and if we kill him then you will toss that young beauty over there to us for us to enjoy. How about it?" Hearing these insolent and brazen voices, Lin Ming's complexion darkened. He clearly remembered who these voices belonged to. They were from the hungry ghosts who had drooled over Shang Mei. After staying in the demon god's tomb for so long, some remnant souls would start to understand each other, and it wasn't surprising for some minds that shared mutually disgusting interests to be on close terms with each other. Immortal remained expressionless. He clenched his fists and highly compressed world strength began crackling in his palms. "What? Do you want to attack us? We are locked in these demon pagodas, so there is nothing you can do to us." These demons didn't fear Immortal Sovereign. Indeed, Immortal Sovereign wasn't able to do anything to them. They had already died and could no longer die again. Moreover, these demon pagodas would protect their divine souls. And if in fact they could die, they would be overjoyed to die forever. They had been locked in these demon pagodas for endless years and had gone crazy with loneliness and despair. Their futures were to be nothing but beasts reared in cages, waiting for the day that the Soul Emperor completely refined this world, whereupon they would be slaughtered no differently than beasts. But at this time, Lin Ming coldly said, "Enough nonsense. I want to see just what your strongest strength is. If you can't do anything to me, how about you admit that you are nothing but base dogs 10,000 times over?" Although these ancient demon emperors had died and nothing could be done to them, most of them were still incredibly arrogant and prideful. If they actually had to admit that they were nothing but dogs 10,000 times over, then they wouldn't have the face to continue existing in this Emperor Bone Sea. "You are seeking death." Hearing Lin Ming's insults, the demons that spoke before were incensed. "Let us begin. Blow this boy's body up. Kill him." This group of demons had arrived in the demon god's tomb at around the same time period. There were 6 of them together and 6 great demons struck out together. 6 demon pagodas began to shake and tremble. Of these 6 demon pagodas, the shortest was 15 levels and one of them was 18 levels. On the opposite shores of the Yellow Springs River, this was considered the highest demon pagoda. But this wasn't the end. When these 6 demons moved, they also galvanized 9 surrounding pagodas that were originally quiet, and all of these pagodas began to gush out with a wild world strength. Bang! Thick black beams of light shot into the heavens. Like 15 giant pythons of varying sizes, they all came hurtling towards Lin Ming. Lin Ming sent out a ray of soul force and sent Shang Mei away. Then, he looked up, his eyes blazing as he stared at these 15 pythons. "Come on." In this moment, Lin Ming's mind seethed with killing intent. If he wanted to defeat the Soul Emperor, then everything would begin from here. Bang! 15 pythons violently rushed onto the altar. A terrifying explosion followed. Lin Ming felt as if a massive bucket of lava was poured across his body. The 36,000 pores of his body began to emit an incomparably hot stream of heat, his entire body releasing steaming hot air. This tyrannical and brutal energy rampaged through his meridians. It impacted into his inner world, breaking in and exploding, compressing, exploding, and then compressing again. Lin Ming could feel that his foundation was being struck by a heavy hammer, maliciously hardened and tempered again and again. If he had to describe this feeling with a single word, then it would be amazing. How wonderful! Lin Ming emitted a loud cry to his heart's content. His shout pierced into the skies, reverberating through the entire Emperor Bone Sea. The impact of energy upon his body was painful, but sometimes pain wouldn't cause misery, instead it would sometimes cause joy and excitement. Now, as these demons poured their energies into Lin Ming's body, the pain it brought just happened to reach this degree. Lin Ming easily withstood it, and even felt a sense of comfort course through his body. What? This brat! Seeing Lin Ming withstand their energies and not only not explode to death, but also not suffering any distress or excruciating pain and instead yell out in joy, this was simply a slap to the faces of these demons. You are courting death. Make him suffer. Make him die. 6 ancient demons went mad with rage. They emitted violent roars of rage as their fierce strength rushed into Lin Ming's body. Lin Ming clenched his fists together and emitted a long howl. Awesome! Come again! Make the energy even stronger. Did you not eat enough before this? Keep on coming! Lin Ming yelled out. And at this time, the 6 ancient demons were flushed with anger. They were rapidly using up their soul force, and in a short several breaths of time, they had used up over half of the world's strength they had gathered. Seeing these 6 great demons try their best and also seeing Lin Ming relax as if he were taking a hot bath, many ancient demons were shocked. These 6 perverted demons had lustful and lascivious natures, but their strength was beyond reproach. Moreover, they even controlled a few of the silent demon pagodas. These 6 demons had joined forces and launched a joint attack with everything they had, yet they weren't even able to do anything to a little Peak Emperor Jr.? Interesting, how interesting. An ancient voice resounded from another demon pagoda. This demon pagoda was also 18 levels, but every level of this pagoda was taller than the levels of the other pagodas. Amongst the rows of demon pagodas, this one felt as if it stood out, like a crane amongst chickens. This little fellow is truly unbelievable. Perhaps he really might be able to give a bit of trouble to that old freak. Another old voice sounded out. What use is there in being just troublesome? It is only good if he can at least cut off a piece of meat from that old freak's body. And this is, if he had enough time to grow. Grow? Then let me give him a helping hand. Suddenly, on the other shores of the Yellow Springs River, another demon pagoda emitted a beam of light. This beam of light was crimson, like a giant blood dragon that claws its way towards Lin Ming. Bang! An explosion swept across the dark altar. Lin Ming's hair scattered outwards, all of his joints emitting explosive crackling sounds. You came just in time. Lin Ming grit his teeth and veins stuck out on his muscles like blue worms. Just the strength of this crimson beam alone was around a third of the sum total of those 6 demons' energies gathered together. And besides feeling pain surge through his body, Lin Ming still forcefully withstood it without any sense of collapse. Seeing this scene, the 6 previously clamoring demons felt as if they had been slapped silly. They all wished to find a hole to crawl into. Even with the 6 of them together along with a demon emperor that was stronger than any one of them, they still weren't able to do anything to Lin Ming, let alone cause his body to explode. I can't believe it. These 6 demons still grit their teeth and continued. But at this time, more demons leapt into the fray. Whoosh! 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 For more beams of divine light shot into the skies. How interesting! Then let us join in and give this brat some more material. Chapter 2186, Lossless Body. As these 4 demon pagodas began to light up, beams of divine light poured down like a waterfall and the world's strength in the surroundings crazily rose in a short period of time. Ayo! Ayo! Wild and fierce roars sounded out. This world strength contained the will and spiritual sense of their masters. Some of these wills were evil, some brutal and tyrannical, some filled with overwhelming hatred and killing intent. After being sealed in the Emperor Bone Sea for dozens of billions of years, many of the demons here had turned mad and demented, wishing to destroy everything in existence. The world strength grew increasingly manic. Even Immortal Sovereign had an earnest expression at this time. This was 20 demons acting out together, many of them having gone mad. They poured out their energy without reserve so that Lin Ming would have to withstand it alone. Wah! 20 beams of divine light gathered together, as thick as a mountain. Such a terrifying world strength caused the void in the Emperor Bone Sea to shake, as if it were being violently rammed by something. The Emperor Bone Sea was an invincible cage, any powerful existence here would be suppressed by the potential of the world. But, this formidable world strength actually caused the Emperor Bone Sea to fiercely shake, because this energy in itself was fused into the potential of this world. Before the energy arrived, Lin Ming could already feel the terrifying impact it would bring upon his body. After such a long time, Lin Ming had already gained the intuition of a wild beast. In that instant, his blood began to swirl inside his body like waves, and he stirred up all the strength within him to greet this wave of energy. Bang! Lin Ming's body shook. The 20 supernatural mites were like 20 mountains pushing down upon him. Waves of energy dazzled like divine splendor, pouring into his body like linked chains of magma. Just how incredible were these divine powers? Each wave had been personally condensed by supreme ancient demon emperors, and Lin Ming was finally beginning to feel the immense pressure. In that moment his body rapidly inflated, as if he would explode. This boy, can he really withstand it? From all around, 100-some spiritual senses focused on Lin Ming's body, waiting to see his performance. Even those 6 demons that argued with Lin Ming couldn't tell where Lin Ming's limits were after seeing his current form. They crazily poured out their world strength in order to save some face. But at this time, as Lin Ming was covered in the vast waves of world strength, another astonishing change occurred. The 36,000 pores on his body began to shine with the brilliance of life essence. This brilliance shot out, forming 36,000 tiny vortexes that endlessly sucked in this incoming strength. Within Lin Ming's body, the 8 gates and 7 Dao palaces began to open up one after another. Waves of life potential erupted from his body, and his acupoints glowed with a bright luster like a rising sun, as if a true dragon were awakening from within him. Every wisp of true dragon energy was evolved from Lin Ming's blood. They helped Lin Ming's mortal body to crazily swallow up the world strength. As world strength gathered onto Lin Ming without end, his originally inflated balloon-like body began to return to normal. Blue veins twisted on Lin Ming's face and blood vessels burst open. His complexion was red like heated iron as he soaked in the immense energy. It was clear that this was difficult for him. "Child, you go over too," Immortal Sovereign said to Shang Mei. The Emperor Bone Sea's world strength was the land where energy throughout the entirety of the demon god's tomb gathered. It was impossible for Lin Ming to absorb it all. And, the abyssal ritual wasn't a 1 or 2 day process, it could be maintained for dozens or even hundreds of years. To withstand the cleansing of world strength for such a long time and the incalculable pain that accompanied it, this caused many peerless geniuses to falter and perish in the process. Shang Mei nodded. She slowly arrived at Lin Ming's side and withstood that massive wave of energy. At this time, the overwhelming amount of energy was withstood by Lin Ming. What Shang Mei had to withstand was only a small portion of it. As energy rushed into Shang Mei's body, the 9 revolution red lotus mark between her eyebrows began to emit a blood-red light. Shang Mei held on to Lin Ming's hands. The two of them blended together their strength and the power of their bloodlines. The two of them were like yin and yang, supplementing each other. Energy flowed between their hands, forming a perfectly harmonized cycle. Lin Ming's complexion grew increasingly calm. But at the same time, the world strength within his body became increasingly rich. This world strength was like countless seeds of life, flooding through his body, infecting every drop of blood, every inch of skin, every bit of bone, taking root within him and transforming him, rebirthing him. Lin Ming had already tempered his mortal body to the extreme. Wanting to advance any further was something filled with countless difficulties. But now, after being soaked beneath this world strength, his mortal body began to experience another breakthrough. After years upon years of fights, in truth, Lin Ming's mortal body had actually gathered injuries. Lin Ming's body possessed incredibly recovery abilities. No matter how severely wounded he was, he could still regenerate himself. But some injuries were extremely special, they were wounds of the Great Tao. When Lin Ming forcefully broke through a boundary, tempered his body, or fought with peerless powerhouses, he had to resist the Great Tao. These attacks could strike at his divine soul and mark his flesh and blood, even connecting with his marrow. Even if he could recover from these injuries, the truth was that they would leave behind small scars. These injuries were extremely faint yet also incredibly profound. They were wounds that were close to the laws, so they were hard to discover and also hard to heal from. The truth was that on ordinary days, these scars wouldn't hinder Lin Ming's cultivation or fighting style. But with Lin Ming having reached this degree, his body had already been tempered to the limit. If he wished to make another breakthrough, it would be incredibly difficult. If he could perfect his own body to form a lossless body, then this would allow Lin Ming to take another step forwards on his road of martial arts. And on this day, as he was being flooded with this world strength, the tiny scars left in Lin Ming's body by the Great Tao began to gradually disappear. Not just that, but small silver lotuses were left behind where these small scars had been. These lotuses burst out with divine natural radiance, and shrouded in the chaos of strength around them, they emerged with ancient runes. These ancient runes grew all throughout Lin Ming's body. Faintly, Lin Ming began to become aware of more things. These were runes of the life laws, and they blended together with Lin Ming's previous understandings of the great Tao of life. Blessings and woes often followed each other. These scars were eliminated by the world strength of the Emperor Bone Sea, and as for Lin Ming, after his mortal body withstood these scars for such a long time, he instinctively and subconsciously became aware of the true meaning of vigorously potent life. These sorts of changes caused the last two sealed Tao palaces in Lin Ming's body to loosen a little. The 9 stars of the Tao Palace, 7 light and 2 dark. The human body's 9 Tao palaces were divided into the 7 bright palaces and the 2 hidden palaces. In truth, leaping from the bright palaces to dark palaces was almost equivalent to breaking through a large realm. This was an incredibly difficult breakthrough. But as Lin Ming's mortal body became increasingly difficult, he had already turned in this direction and had taken his first solid step forwards. Lin Ming's eyes flashed open. His pupils glittered with blinding light, as if great suns existed within them. The world strength that was instilled in Lin Ming might not be completely absorbed by him, but as the waves of world strength stabilized, they formed droplets that gathered around him. These droplets were attracted to his body, forming an endless misty fog around him. Seeing this occur, Immortal Sovereign's lights lit up with a tinge of appreciation and wonder. Lin Ming's transformation had already begun. As for Shang Mei, who was beside him, her transformation wasn't too far away. The two of them had become one, yin and yang reinforcing each other. They both possessed an incomparable degree of potential. It was hard to imagine just what step they would arrive at after withstanding the baptism of the Emperor Bone Sea's world strength. Seeing Lin Ming not only resist the world strength of 20-some demon emperors and even have a sense of breakthrough beneath the soaking of world strength, this was enough to cause the other demons standing on the sidelines to pay attention to him. Without a doubt, Lin Ming had already proven himself. Perhaps what Immortal said was true. If these two little children had enough time to grow, then they really might be able to resist the Soul Emperor. When it came to that old fellow who had enslaved them all, these demons hated him to the depths of their marrow. To kill him so that their remnant souls could be freed was an obsession that had taken root deep in their minds. Whoosh! 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 At this time, the other demons also moved. The originally crazy and fierce demons here that had hearts filled with killing intent had a moment of rare earnestness. They poured in all of their energy. They no longer tried to have Lin Ming blow up and die, but sincerely offered their world strength so that Lin Ming and Shang Mei could soak in it and complete their breakthrough. Chapter 2187, The Limit of Pain. Over 100 giant beams of world strength shrouded in the aura of demons came crashing down, each one dazzling, their brilliance spreading out for tens of thousands of miles. It was like a river of stars came falling down from the skies, their massive momentum slamming into the earth, causing the world to shake. The Emperor Bone Seed began to boil over as monstrous demonic auras filled the air. The mysterious rules and the countless remnant traces of ancient demons were quickened. Steaming black energy filled the air, seemingly filled with the forms of ancient demons. They formed a storm that raged out in all directions. Bang! Lin Ming bore all of this immense world strength. His body that glistened like jade was suddenly curved by the impact into a tightened bow. His skin, his skeleton, everything emitted creaking sounds that blasted out like the roars of dragons and cries of phoenixes. Beneath this tremendous pressure, he remained unyielding. His tendons twisted over the surface of his body like snakes. He raised his arm and hands up and roared into the heavens. At the same time, Shang Mei was also joined together with him. Her strength blended together with Lin Ming's, and together they withstood this baptism of world strength. Ka ka ka! Lin Ming's muscles and blood vessels began to rapidly crack. An indescribable pain shot into his spiritual sea. This sort of feeling was as if his mortal body had been tossed beneath a stone mill, forcefully grinded down by it. However, Lin Ming's consciousness remained clear and sober the entire time. Shang Mei held tightly onto Lin Ming's hand, blood flowing down from her lips. She withstood less energy than Lin Ming, but she was also weaker than Lin Ming. In terms of the pain she withstood, it was no less than Lin Ming. And at this time, not too far away, Immortal Sovereign was watching all of this occur with a calm expression. A treasure sword had to be tempered and sharpened, and the fragrance of plum blossoms only emerged after the bitter cold. Compared to the upcoming apocalypse of existence, what Lin Ming and Shang Mei withstood was nothing. Wang! 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 Between Lin Ming and Shang Mei, the blending of energy became increasingly intense. This strength was several times greater than an ordinary occurrence of the abyssal ritual. Although Lin Ming and Shang Mei were withstanding it together and dividing the pressure between the two of them, this still far outstripped an ordinary abyssal ritual. In particular, Lin Ming withstood the majority of the energy. He clenched his teeth and persisted. There were too many things he carried on his shoulders. He had experienced countless tribulations, countless perilous life and death situations, and had even experienced the boundless ups and downs of life. Pushing his way through all of that, he arrived here today, shouldering the destiny and hopes of innumerable people. Because of that, he absolutely could not allow himself to fail here. Beneath the galvanization of the world strength, Lin Ming's body instinctively evolved strands of the great Tao laws that he excelled in the most to compete with the world strength, making it even better to swallow and refine them. As these laws appeared, the raging world strength seemed to solidify, the essence condensing into little droplets that slowly revolved around Lin Ming. The strength of the world slowly steadied, forming a sealed space where they circulated within. As the 100 demons watching from the side saw this, their eyes began to shine. At this time, no one was mad anymore. In fact, there was even a hint of heated fanaticism in their hearts. Lin Ming and Shang Mei were truly able to withstand the baptism of the Emperor Bonesea's world potential. Perhaps they could truly rise from here and help them exact vengeance upon their enemy. Everyone, let us transfer the world strength of the Emperor Bonesea together and stabilize the force field. There might be feuds between us and we may be at odds with each other, but let us work together today and give this our everything. Of the 100-some demons, no one dared to slack off. Even the 6 demons who clashed with Lin Ming had slowly put away their embarrassment and rage towards him. First, they didn't want to do anything that would offend the other demons here, and secondly, they truly wished to break from these cages and take revenge against the Soul Emperor to obtain true freedom, true relief from this hell. Beneath the joint efforts of all the demons, they began to gather all the world strength they could summon to the area around Lin Ming and Xiang Mei. An invisible force field completely covered Lin Ming and Xiang Mei. This force field was like a giant cocoon that isolated the laws and formed a sealed space, allowing Lin Ming and Xiang Mei to live in an independent world. And this independent world contained an incredibly rich world strength. The abyssal ritual was an extremely long process, but it only took the 100-some demons several hours to contribute their world strength. Afterwards, the world strength would seal itself into a force field and the trial challengers would soak within it to slowly refine it. After the force field was completely sealed up, Lin Ming and Xiang Mei felt the excruciating pain rise by several degrees. This world strength continually crushed and pulverized their mortal bodies, soul, and even inner worlds. Burning hot energy raced through their pores, acupoints, breaking into their meridians and blood vessels as it recklessly galloped about. If the pain before was like being thrown beneath a grinding pan, then now, while their bodies were being grinded away, they were also being boiled in scalding oil. Beneath the tremendous impact of energy, their flesh and blood started to tear open and flip over. However, within this force field, special laws existed in the rich world strength that increased the rate at which Lin Ming and Xiang Mei's cracked flesh regenerated. Their flesh cracked open and regenerated again and again. The two of them had incredibly powerful mortal body foundations, but even so, this sort of endless cracking and regeneration consumed a mind-boggling amount of energy. They did not take pills nor did they drink spiritual liquids. The energy they needed to consume would have to be derived from the surrounding world strength. In this repeated tempering, their bodies absorbed the surrounding world strength without end. By letting their bodies crack open and regenerate again, they used this method to consume this strength. And this process would continue for years. Pain. If pain only lasted for a while, then many people could grit their teeth and bear it. But to withstand such pain for dozens of years or even hundreds of years, it was enough to make one go crazy. When trial challengers were placed in the abyssal ritual, this was the test of their will, the test of withstanding the massive level of pain. If their potential was lacking, then their bodies would explode from being unable to withstand the great volume of energy. If their willpower was lacking, then they would go crazy from the pain. If their souls weren't strong enough, then the continuous impact of pain would turn their souls to ashes. Lin Ming and Xiang Mei existed at the peak when it came to these three aspects. Even so, to withstand such agonizing pain for such a long time was still a difficult challenge for them. You must both remember a single word: endure. Immortal Sovereign's words pierced through the boundaries of the force field and entered into Lin Ming and Xiang Mei's ears. Gather your will and never lose your consciousness. Imagine yourself as the deep and heavy earth. No matter what pain you experience, you must remain motionless. Defend your minds at all costs. If your willpower ever fails, then the world strength that is in your body will no longer be controlled by you. Once that happens, not only will your body not regenerate, but you will be torn to shreds. If that happens, you will be deader than dead. You will become a lonely soul here that is suppressed in the great array formation beneath us, becoming nourishment for the demon god's tomb. What you need is to forget this pain and control your nerves, even treating this pain as pleasure. Only like this can you last for 100 years or even hundreds of years. Endure. Forget the pain. That was easy to say, but how difficult was it to do? However, no matter how difficult it was, Lin Ming and Xiang Mei would still give it a try. With the massive levels of soul force they possessed, they would continually push at their boundaries and try to transform themselves. Control my nerves, drive out the pain, and even treat this pain as pleasure. These thoughts raced through Lin Ming's mind. He tried his best to forget this pain. But, with the feeling of being drowned in boiling oil and crushed beneath a grinding pan coursing through his body, how could it be so easy to forget? Slowly, Lin Ming endured such pain for a month. But no matter how powerful his divine soul was, it would still slowly weaken. At this time Lin Ming's face was as pale as paper. Although he had plenty of energy, he had to sit motionlessly and be tormented by agonizing pain, so how could he have a happy expression? Pain comes from the body, but it actually reflects in the soul and mind. If I can control my soul, then no matter how painful it is, it cannot be this fierce. As Lin Ming was pushed to the limits of what he could bear, this thought flashed in his mind. My soul, because it has been solidified by the magic cube and after having been cultivated through 7 reincarnations, has already re-entered the realm of the eternal soul. If I had to describe it in words, it should be unchangeable and immutable. To have an unchangeable and immutable soul, I should be as steady as the great earth. How could I not be able to withstand such trivial pain of the flesh? Lin Ming roared out in his heart. In this moment, his consciousness became crystal clear and he felt the pain in his body reduce by a great deal. His mortal body was still being torn apart and energy was still burning through his meridians, but all of that lessened with this new comprehension. Lin Ming could feel that the tearing pain of his mortal body caused a faint excitement to stir in his soul. And the feeling of his meridians being burned was similar to soaking in a hot spring bath. Although it still hurt, it was no longer unbearable like before. He felt as if he truly turned into the deep and steady earth, capable of withstanding the baptism of world strength without a single movement. This sort of comprehension had only just begun. But as his comprehensions deepened, Lin Ming's abyssal ritual would become increasingly smooth until he absorbed all the world strength he could. Chapter 2188, The Critical Point of True Divinity. Years passed silently. Lin Ming and Xiang Mei quietly withstood the long abyssal ritual. Ever since Lin Ming comprehended the mysteries of the eternal soul, the impact of pain against his soul grew increasingly weak as he slowly adapted to it. He even began to do as Immortal Sovereign said and took this pain as pleasure. And beside Lin Ming, Xiang Mei also found her own methods to adapt to this pain. While she didn't have Lin Ming's eternal soul, she used her talent to forcefully take control of her nerves. At the start, Xiang Mei had to rely on revolving the Holy Scripture laws, using the life strength of endless growing to neutralize the agonizing impacts. But several years later, Xiang Mei was already able to erase the pain to her soul. 10 years later, Xiang Mei sat cross-legged within the small independent world, her expression like that of a sleeping baby. It was hard to imagine just what sort of energy impact she was actually withstanding at this moment. As for Lin Ming, he was like a never-changing statue, not even uttering a single word. From the beginning and even now, Immortal Sovereign stood by the side, silently waiting. He floated high in the air, his divine sense constantly examining the situation within the independent world. As for the 100-some demon emperors, every 10 years they would pour their world strength into the force field that Lin Ming and Xiang Mei were in order to ensure that the world strength within it was always at a highly saturated state. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. In this independent world, Lin Ming and Xiang Mei remained unmoving for several hundred years. They only held hands and quietly withstood all of this. Beneath the repeated impact of energy, their foundation became increasingly solid. From the outside, nothing seemed to have changed. The only thing that changed was the time period from when those ancient demon emperors would pour their world strength into the independent world. At the start it was every 10 years, but afterwards, it was once every 5 years. After that, it was once every 3 years. And 900 years later, they would pour their world strength into the force field every single year. After 900 years of bitter cultivation, the energy within Lin Ming and Xiang Mei had gathered to an extreme. They had already reached their limits. In fact, Xiang Mei's cultivation was originally higher, and over 500 years ago she had already reached the critical point for breaking into true divinity. However, in order to step forwards with Lin Ming and form a harmonious yin-yang energy cycle, she continually suppressed her cultivation to help Lin Ming cultivate. Because of this, 900 years later, their cultivations had become increasingly close. This long abyssal ritual even left the many ancient demon emperors of the demon god's tomb shocked. Before this, there had been abyssal demons who passed the test of the abyssal ritual and slowly grew into totem-level abyssals in the future. But the abyssal ritual they withstood was only several hundred years in total, while Lin Ming and Xiang Mei withstood one that was approaching 1,000 years. This was truly inconceivable. Like this, time continued to the 1,000th year. The many ancient demon emperors had started to pour their word strength into the independent world every 10 months. 1,080 years later, on one day, Lin Ming's eyes suddenly flashed open. At this moment his skin started to explode like stars and pieces of his jade-like flesh fell off, blowing outwards from the tremendous and chaotic flow of energy. This flesh had a strong medicinal fragrance. Covered in the milky white light, it was actually abandoned like this. Even the demon emperors felt their hearts ache at such a loss. When Lin Ming's old flesh and skin fell off, new flesh and skin had already appeared. This new flesh was crystal bright and shine like a sun, illuminating the surrounding world. Countless golden vortexes appeared atop every pore. Immortal beings seemed to sit atop these vortexes, reciting ancient mantras. His entire being was shrouded in a haze of these ancient mantras, as if some great revered being was being born. Meanwhile, Lin Ming's body also trembled. Bones penetrated through his flesh and blood, sticking out like divine pillars. If one looked at these bones carefully, they could see numerous tiny marks on them, as well as some areas that were pitch black, and even blood markings of the great Tao. Now, these bones were being forcefully pushed out of Lin Ming's body. He was replacing his flesh and blood, being reborn. This scene was extremely macabre and abnormal. As the old demons around the Emperor Bonesi saw this, they were shocked, all of them rendered speechless. After Lin Ming reached this step, he still managed to replace his flesh and blood once more. It was obvious just how useful this world strength was in tempering his mortal body. Kacha! Kacha! Lin Ming's bones shattered without end. An energy broke out from them, filled with the roars of demons as it floated into the air. These bones were engraved with mystical bone runes. For anyone else these would be supremely rare and valuable bones, and yet Lin Ming was discarding them so easily. However, this was not the end. After several breaths of time, these bones that were discarded were destroyed. As the fragments of bone dust fell all around, the purest life energy contained in those bones actually returned to Lin Ming's body. Even some of the medicinally fragrant flesh that Lin Ming discarded rapidly turned into ash. Their essence energy as well as the source law fragments contained within flew back into Lin Ming. Many old demons marveled at the spectacle. To be reborn to such a degree was simply inconceivable. This was a true perfect body. Lin Ming had already taken pain as pleasure. But, in the process of his birth, he fell into agonizing pain once more. His source great Tao had already been fused into his bones and flesh and blood, and wanting to discard it from his body to be replaced and to be reborn, that was incredibly difficult. One needed the most formidable of wills as well as an incomparably stable foundation. Not too far away, Immortal Sovereign's eyes lit up with a fascinated light. As he looked at Lin Ming's changes, he had already stood up. Now, what he was waiting for was Lin Ming's true transformation. He knew that this moment of replacing the bones and flesh was only the prelude to Lin Ming's breakthrough into true divinity. Beside Lin Ming, Xiang Mei also opened her eyes. In truth, she had waited for Lin Ming for 600 years. Waiting this long wasn't a waste, but was actually highly significant to her. This was because if she could step into true divinity together with Lin Ming, then the two of them could touch upon the heavenly Tao together and arouse the trembling of the world laws. Because they were complementing each other in yin-yang circulation, they would obtain the greatest benefits. As Xiang Mei was fermenting her own energy, the 9 revolution red lotus mark between her eyebrows began to shine with divine light. She wanted to complete her breakthrough together with Lin Ming. At the same time, Lin Ming's replacing of bones and flesh was continuing. As his bones were reborn anew, his organs also started to transform. An unknown period of time passed. Lin Ming's blood vitality scattered again and again, but was reborn repeatedly due to the perfusion of world strength. Finally, his body dazzled once more, and creamy white bones grew out from his old shattered ones. These bones were densely carved with mysterious ancient runes. It was like towering mountains grew within his body, supporting his infinite power. Fresh blood boiled over, the sounds like roaring true dragons. He emitted a loud cry into the heavens. The sound waves turned into tumbling sea waves that surged into the Emperor Bone Sea. His gaze was like the sun and moon. As he opened and closed his eyes, it was like worlds were being born and extinguished, rivers of stars flowing within without end. And at this time, Immortal Sovereign pointed out a finger. With a light cracking sound, Lin Ming and Shang Mei's spatial rings shattered. 3 ancient black books emerged from their 2 spatial rings. These were the ceremonial rites books left behind by the Soul Emperor. The ceremonial rites books had been tampered with by the Soul Emperor. If one withstood the abyssal ritual using them, their spiritual sea would be invaded. And now, beneath the support of all the ancient demon emperors, Immortal Sovereign was using this world potential to refine these ceremonial rites books. Without a doubt, these 3 ceremonial rites books contained an incomparably pure strength. How could Immortal Sovereign waste it? Now, Immortal Sovereign was refining these books to draw out their strength. This would undoubtedly allow Lin Ming and Shang Mei's cultivations to take a step further, and provide them with the maximum energy possible for their breakthrough into true divinity. Over 100 ancient demon emperors suddenly stirred up, their thoughts focusing. They revolved their strength, moving as much world strength as they could towards Lin Ming and Shang Mei. And at this time, an ancient voice leisurely echoed out, shaking the heavens and earth. What a grand occasion that hasn't been seen for even 100 billion years. This voice actually came from the 30-level pagoda that was around the Dark Altars. Originally, there were only 3 pagodas around the Dark Altars, and only Immortal Sovereign had been awakened because of the battle between Lin Ming and Deep Child. As for the other 2 pagodas, they remained quiet. Yet at this time, a response rose up in one of them. Immortal Sovereign's eyes began to shine. Chapter 2189, Demon Lord. Wah! The 30-level demon pagoda began to quietly shiver, as if some incomprehensible being was emerging. Even the demon pagoda itself seemed to find this existence difficult to suppress. It's actually him? The master of the 30-level demon pagoda. Heavens! He must have been in deep slumber for the last 20 billion years. I even thought he had been freed from this hell and no longer existed. He also wants to help? The numerous ancient demon emperors were bewildered. The Emperor Bone Sea had already existed for over 100 billion years, and throughout this time, countless great demons were imprisoned here. They had to endure endless pain and loneliness in the form of remnant souls. And in the Emperor Bone Sea, there was a supreme ruling powerhouse that appeared 20 billion years ago. He had been locked inside the 30-level demon pagoda around the Dark Altars. Because it had been so long ago, not even the ancient demons remembered his true name. They only knew his title, Demon Lord. He was once the ruler of the Dark Abyss. He didn't rely on the abyssal ritual to become a totem-level abyssal, but instead used his own strength and talent to step into the realm beyond divinity. The truth was that even during the time he was alive, no one would mention his name. Because of his great strength and the world's awe towards him, his name had become taboo, and all demons would forever refer to him as the Demon Lord. In the Emperor Bone Sea, there was no one who dared disrespect the Demon Lord. The Abyssals revered powerhouses. However, although Immortal Sovereign was powerful, he was still from an alien race. As for this Demon Lord, he was from their own race. Moreover, although the Demon Lord's demon pagoda was slightly shorter, the truth was that his strength wasn't necessarily any weaker than Immortal's, perhaps he was even stronger. This was even more true when considering that just before Immortal Sovereign perished, he transferred a massive amount of his life essence and strength of his laws to his daughter. The reason Immortal Sovereign was locked into the 33-level Demon Pagoda was because the Demon Lord had arrived at the Emperor Bone Sea at an even earlier time. And when Immortal Sovereign entered the Emperor Bone Sea, the Demon Lord had already fallen into a deep slumber. The two of them had never had direct contact with each other. Immortal had always sensed the existence of the Demon Lord and knew that he had not vanished. However, the Demon Lord's heart and mind had entered a state of deathly stillness, and thus he faced the Emperor Bone Sea and all else with nothing but passive indifference. The Demon Lord was already used to his deep slumber. But today, as Lin Ming and Shang Mei reached the critical point in their breakthrough, he had finally awoken. Immortal Sovereign slowly turned around and looked at the 30-level Demon Pagoda. A smile curved up on his handsome features. Immortal. The Demon Lord called out Immortal Sovereign's title. As the two greatest powerhouses of the Emperor Bone Sea, they were able to speak through their divine souls and sense each other's presence. As for the third and also the highest 36-level Demon Pagoda, the truth was that it was empty. In other words, these two were the masters of the Emperor Bone Sea. Demon Lord. Well met. Ha 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 ha. The Demon Lord suddenly laughed, his voice loud and filled with the changes of time, like a great bell that smashed into the minds of the demons present. We come from different races and different times, yet today we can join forces. Perhaps this is our predestined fate. What you said is right, this is fate. But the reason we join forces is to break out of the shackles of fate. As the Demon Lord spoke, an incomparably thick demonic aura gushed out from the 30-level Demon Pagoda as if it would swallow the world. Turbulent waves of energy began to emit from the pagoda. And at this time, Immortal Sovereign also moved. For these last several hundred years he had been saving his strength to help Lin Ming and Shang Mei close this final distance. Together, the Demon Lord and Immortal Sovereign gathered their strength into the independent world where Lin Ming and Shang Mei were. A wild and tyrannical world strength, in addition to the strength of the books of ceremonial rites, rushed into the independent space over twice as strong as the previous saturated state of world strength. For a time, the independent world Lin Ming and Shang Mei were in began to rapidly expand. The void turned into chaos and countless divine chains of order tore through the endless skies like bolts of raging thunder. Brilliant hues of primordial energy began to revolve into towering mountains and rushing rivers. Mighty demon dragons growled at the air and Kirans roared into the skies as this mysterious world began to take full shape. Lin Ming and Shang Mei suddenly felt an immense pressure. But at this time, they were breaking into the true divinity realm, and what they needed was an incomparably large flood of energy. Whirl! 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 A shocking strength appeared from the deepest depths of Lin Ming's body. This was an unknown world. It contained perfect great Tao laws, mountains, rivers, and life forms evolved from spiritual energy. Boundless continents and surging oceans existed, and even celestial bodies hung high in the heavens, casting down their brilliance. This was Lin Ming's inner world. Currently, he needed to use this world to link to the world strength of the Emperor Bone Sea, evolving the hidden meanings within this world and taking it into his own body to finally reach true divinity. As Lin Ming's inner world appeared, it seemed to become the center of all. Wang! Wang! Countless divine chains of laws wove together, extracting all the surrounding energies. For a time, behind Lin Ming and Shang Mei, giant supreme phantoms appeared. When a martial artist reached the boundary of the 9 divine shifts, they could evolve their own inner world, and by developing their inner world they could increase their strength. At the World King boundary, that was to refine a world to enter their body and fuse with their inner world. At the half-step Empyrean realm, one evolved a supreme phantom within their inner world. At the Empyrean realm, the supreme phantom condensed into essence, and the supreme phantom stretched through the heavens and earth of the inner world, thus being called an Empyrean. As for the true divinity realm, that was to fuse the inner world's supreme phantom into one's flesh and blood and divine soul, merging together into one singular being. Like this, one was the divine God of the world, and the divine God of the world was themselves. This was a true divine God, a true divinity. Lin Ming and Shang Mei had incomparably deep backgrounds. The supreme phantoms they formed had developed features that were completely similar to themselves. The only difference was that the expressions of these phantoms were filled with the cold indifference of a god. It could be said that these supreme phantoms were the godheads of Lin Ming and Shang Mei. Lin Ming leapt upwards, gathering the surrounding stable world strength, bringing it all into his inner world with his supreme phantom. Bang! As energy collided, countless divine chains of order formed in this world, all of them wrapping around Lin Ming and Shang Mei's supreme phantoms, locking them down. These divine chains were heavy and profound, countless and complex. They formed a giant cocoon of chains made from numerous overlapping layers. However, as Lin Ming and Shang Mei saw this, neither of them was surprised or overjoyed. Behind them, their supreme phantoms began to move. They erupted with a terrifying strength as they struggled to break free from these divine chains and absorb them into their bodies for their own use. To become the one controlling these divine chains, that was one of the necessary symbols of a true divinity. However, the divine chains that formed when Lin Ming and Shang Mei were breaking into true divinity far outstripped an ordinary true divinities, whether it was in quantity or quality. In the hazy world, bolts of lightning shuttle through space. Time and space laws shattered into fragments after being destabilized by the momentous impact of energy. All the great Tao rules lost their source strength. Only Lin Ming and Shang Mei's will and the will of the Emperor Bonesi's world strength began to mutually crash and push each other forwards. Runes collided in the air, battling each other. The excessively rich world strength finally turned into an ancient divine demon that hurtled towards Lin Ming and Shang Mei. Lin Ming and Shang Mei's eyes blazed with burning fighting spirit. They stepped through the void and fought with the ancient divine demon. Rumble! 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 Energy exploded. Laws danced in the air. Lin Ming's newborn lossless body was wet with blood. However, the ancient divine demon formed by the massive amount of world strength was finally routed by the joint efforts of Lin Ming and Shang Mei and turned into a wonderful and auspicious strength that was absorbed by the two of them. The true divinity boundary was close at hand. The two supreme phantoms behind them also started to slowly fuse into their mortal bodies. Bang! 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 In that moment, Lin Ming's bones seemed to be blasted with countless thunderbolts. Every explosion deafened the ears, everyone leaving behind flashing runes. In the middle of these runes, they were either occupied by god kings or demons. Some god kings formed seals in their hands with towering trees standing tall behind them, thrusting into the clouds. Countless jewels seemed to drape down amongst them, wrapping them in solemn visage. There were also peerless death gods that grasped bloodied and ominous weapons. They stepped upon countless bones, filled with a grim and threatening atmosphere. These were the manifestations of the power of divinity and demons within Lin Ming's body, and represented his greatest strength. And these phantoms of divinity and demons that appeared were close to the source of the great Tao. Even the many ancient demons that were watching were also able to gain some comprehensions from witnessing this, and all of them couldn't help but exclaim in admiration at Lin Ming's laws. At this time, behind Lin Ming, a massive wheel appeared and an Asura with overwhelming slaughter energy stood atop it. Its head reached the skies and its feet stepped on the earth. It was huge and without limit. Countless stars lingered about this giant wheel. As the Asura appeared, yin and yang manifested beneath its influence, and chaos wrapped around all, seeming to shroud over the entirety of the cosmos. It was as if the great Tao of life and death was being interpreted here, shocking to the extreme. This contained the mighty aura of the Asura Roadmaster, and was a peak manifestation of Lin Ming's comprehensions of the Asura laws. On some stars, Tao palaces appeared. These Tao palaces were extraordinary and ancient, communing in resonant with the world as they appeared. Starlight from trillions of stars appeared, blooming and falling down. They resonated together, weaving into vibrant galaxies. Each galaxy had celestial mountains floating within, had ancient nations overflowing with spirit, had trillions upon quadrillions of people living freely, and sounds of distant sutras that shook into the past and future. these were the recitations of countless supreme beings chanting in unison. This was the 9 stars of the Tao Palace, another road that Lin Ming had walked to the peak. Atop these stars, red lotuses began to slowly bloom. Atop these red lotuses, the concepts of life and death evolved, fading away and then being reborn. This was the essence of Lin Ming's understandings of the samsara of life and death. Even the creator of the Holy Scripture, Immortal Sovereign, admired the comprehensions that Lin Ming added in. At this time, Immortal Sovereign knew that the supreme phantom behind Lin Ming had fused with his flesh and blood. Now, it was only a matter of time. In at most several hours, Lin Ming would reach true divinity. At that time it was unknown just what level of strength he would reach. After this, he would bring the hundreds of ancient demon emperors that, even though they had gone crazy over the years, still managed to retain their intelligence, and they would fight the Soul Emperor together. Chapter 2190, Double True Divinities. When a martial artist broke into the realm of true divinity, the powerful laws within their bodies would manifest one after another. The supreme phantom behind Lin Ming had already half-fused with his mortal body. It sat atop a 7-leaf red lotus, a giant Azura wheel spinning above its head. At this moment, the 7-revolution red lotus was like the earth and the Azura wheel was like the heavens. And between the heavens and earth, the heretical god tree that Lin Ming cultivated as well as the fused martial intent Bodhi tree began to appear. Between these divine trees, true dragons and true phoenixes danced in the air. This was the dragon and phoenix blood within Lin Ming's body. Divine chains of order also began condensing in the void. These divine chains of order wrapped around the trees like wreaths of gemmed necklaces. At this moment, the various laws that Lin Ming refined were appearing and slowly integrating into the divine chains of order. This was a transformation of laws. However, as Lin Ming's mortal body had fused 90% with his supreme phantom, beside him, an even greater red lotus bloomed. This red lotus had 9 flower petals and each flower petal was like its own separate world. Above the red lotus, wind and snow howled and raging deep blue energy surged, forming a frosty river that connected the heavens and earth. Xiang Mei had begun breaking into true divinity. Bang! World strength swelled up from all over and rushed towards Xiang Mei, forming a vast sea that washed over every inch of her flesh and blood, every wisp of her divine soul. At the same time, the divine chains of order around Xiang Mei began to loudly shatter, turning into source law fragments that joined together with the strength of the world to break into her body. This was a baptism of the heavens and earth that a martial artist underwent when becoming a true divinity. To all true divinities, including Lin Ming and Xiang Mei, such a chance only appeared once. When a martial artist became a true divinity, they would undergo a baptism of laws and the world's strength. This was an incomparably precious opportunity. And at this time, Lin Ming and Xiang Mei were holding hands. This world energy not only flowed through Xiang Mei's body and divine soul, but also flowed through Lin Ming. A part of the laws and energy passed through Lin Ming's body before returning to Xiang Mei. Although it was only flowing through, it still brought incomprehensible comprehensions and advantages to Lin Ming. Every wisp of laws and energy left behind their own unique mark within Lin Ming. Lin Ming could feel the red lotus beneath him tremble in excitement, and the Azura wheel also howled in joy. The heretical god tree, the Bodhi tree, everything shined with overflowing vitality, their branches and leaves stretched outwards as new roots budded. At this time, a clear divine sense spread into Lin Ming's spiritual sea. "Daddy, how could you forget me with something so good happening?" This was Jior's voice. Lin Ming's thoughts stirred and he looked into the magic cube space. A cute little girl that looked just a bit over 10 years old was looking up at him with wide and hopeful eyes. Without much thought, Lin Ming reached out a hand and a part of the endless laws and world energy that belonged to Xiang Mei flowed into the magic cube space before flowing back out. And these energies and laws rushed into Jior's body. To withstand a baptism of energy of a true divinity's breakthrough was already an unimaginable lucky chance. And the comprehensions brought about when Xiang Mei stepped into the realm of true divinity actually far surpassed other ordinary true divinities. According to all common sense, with Jior's strength, even if she was soaked in this world strength, she still wouldn't be able to comprehend many things. However, Joer was Shang Mei's own flesh and blood daughter, and their two bloodlines were linked together. And when Joer was breeding within Shang Mei and had been sealed away, she had also come into contact with many of Shang Mei's laws. Now, the world strength that Shang Mei guided into herself was completely unimpeded as it swept into Joer. Every inch of Joer's body and divine soul were being baptized by the law fragments and world energy. Joer couldn't help but cry out in joy. To her, this baptism would have an extremely profound influence on her future road of martial arts. At this time, the small black dragon and ruby that were also within the magic cube couldn't obtain such a great advantage like Joer. However, the baptism had only just begun. Bang! 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 Horrifying explosive sounds rang through the world. Just 10 breaths into Shang Mei breaking into true divinity, the energy in the world began to turn frantic and mad. If it was said that the world strength that Shang Mei gathered during her breakthrough was like a vast sea, then now, this vast sea had formed 100-mile-high waves, an incomparably crazy sight. Lin Ming's breakthrough had also begun. The world strength he gathered as he broke into true divinity was much greater than Shang Mei's. This was an unimaginable amount. And just like Lin Ming obtaining advantages during Shang Mei's breakthrough, Shang Mei also obtained incredibly benefits during Lin Ming's breakthrough. World strength and energy of laws passed through Shang Mei's body, leaving behind permanent marks before pouring back into Lin Ming. The magnetic life fields of Lin Ming and Shang Mei had already superimposed on top of each other. At this time, their flesh and blood and divine souls had all come together in perfect harmony. This sort of union could no longer be described simply as yin-yang reinforcement. Between the two of them, each was leaving profound marks in the other's lives. And the advantages that these marks brought were already indescribable. Wang! 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 A horrifying shaking sound thundered through the world. From above Lin Ming's head and below his feet, the Azura Wheel and Holy Scripture Red Lotus began to approach each other. Slowly, the two of them were beginning to fuse together. When Lin Ming was at the Skyspill continent and started to become aware of the laws of life and death, he had already attempted to join the Holy Scripture and Heavenly Sutra together to fuse the universe of the world and the universe of the body. After all sorts of experiences and lucky chances, he was finally beginning to make progress. And now, as Lin Ming was breaking into true divinity, the phenomenon of the Holy Scripture and Heavenly Sutra fusing together was appearing once more. Lin Ming's achievements in the Azura Heavenly Tao were higher. But when it came to compression, his understandings of the Holy Scripture were no less than the Heavenly Sutra. Especially at this time, Shang Mei was sitting beside Lin Ming. She had undergone perfect 9 revolutions, and the connection between their souls only boosted this fusion. Seeing this, many ancient demons were at a loss for words. Even immortal Sovereign's heart shook. He stood up, his eyes blazing as he looked at Lin Ming. As the creator of the Holy Scripture, he certainly knew how difficult it was to unify the great laws of the world's universe and the body's universe. Otherwise, he wouldn't have formed such a contentious disagreement of ideas with the Azura Road Master 10 billion years ago. Lin Ming sat in the void, solemn and dignified. The Azura Wheel and Holy Scripture Red Lotus grew closer and closer. However, after fusing just apart, their speeds actually slowed down. As if there was something blocking their fusion. These were two of the highest laws of the 33 heavens. Even if they were to start fusing together, it wasn't something that could be accomplished in a single go. Bang! An explosion rang out. World strength gathered. The Azura Wheel and Holy Scripture Red Lotus stopped here. They shattered into fragments, turning into the most source law energies that began to baptize Lin Ming's body. Within the magic cube space, Joer leapt up in joy. During Lin Ming and Shang Mei's breakthrough, she had obtained all the advantages she could ask for. Whether it was Lin Ming or Shang Mei, they shared a bloodline with her, and thus there would be no rejection of energy between them. She greedily basked in the baptism of energy brought about by her father and mother, lazily stretching out her body. And besides Yor, the one that obtained the next greatest advantages was the little black dragon. The little black dragon was unable to fuse together with Xiang Mei's energies, but it could actually withstand the baptism of world strength brought about by Lin Ming. This was because when the little black dragon was born, it already shared a bloodline with Lin Ming. World strength gathered into a sea. This process continued for an unknown period of time, but finally, Lin Ming's strength began to explosively grow. At this time, Lin Ming was already being reborn anew. His 36,000 pores emitted divine beams of light that shot out for 100,000 feet. World strength raged around him. Even the stable space of the Emperor Bone Sea shook without end due to the unified strength of Lin Ming and Xiang Mei's breakthrough. Within their demon pagodas, when the ancient demons faced Lin Ming, they even felt a hint of awe. Although they had all been upper true divinity existences and above when they were alive, they had already been dead for innumerable years. All that was left behind of them were wisps of their remnant souls. Now, facing the tremendous pressure brought about by Lin Ming's breakthrough into true divinity, this still wasn't something easy for them to withstand. Lin Ming slowly opened his eyes. The strength within his body seemed as if it would burst out of him, as if a punch could break a world, as if a chop could sever a river of stars. He looked at his hands and slowly gripped his fists together. This was the legendary true divinity realm. Once, it had seemed a distant and unachievable goal, but today he had finally broken through. Chapter 2191, Refining the Soul Emperor's Strength. After breaking into true divinity, Lin Ming had a fervent desire to fight. However, he was well aware that after reaching this boundary, there were few in the entire universe that were capable of being his match. Lin Ming pulled Xiang Mei's hand. After breaking into true divinity, his senses had become exceptionally sharp. He could faintly feel an energy hidden deep within Xiang Mei that was discordant with her bloodline. This energy was similar to the world strength of the Emperor Bone Sea that Lin Ming had absorbed, but it was actually much fiercer and far more evil. The strength of a totem abyssal. This thought flashed through Lin Ming's thoughts. Thinking about it, he recalled that Xiang Mei once stated that the Soul Emperor had left behind 2 marks within her. The first was a spirit mark. Xiang Mei had already shattered that by herself. The next was an energy mark. The essence of this mark was the strength of a totem-level abyssal. While it could be used in critical situations to control Xiang Mei, it could also protect her. Originally, it would have been impossible for either Lin Ming or Xiang Mei to do anything to the Soul Emperor's strength. But now that Xiang Mei and Lin Ming broke into true divinity together, if they joined forces they absolutely could refine this strength. Lin Ming. Xiang Mei and Lin Ming had become of one mind. At this time, Xiang Mei also knew what Lin Ming wanted to do. She slowly nodded. Lin Ming put his hands together, revolving the divine power within him. Hum. Wang. Supernatural powers surged like a giant grinding pan, pressing down on the totem-level strength within Xiang Mei's body, disintegrating. This strength was of an extremely high quality. Even if Xiang Mei and Lin Ming joined forces, they could only wear it away a bit at a time. Pang! With a loud explosive sound, this totem strength burst out, forming a hazy phantom in the skies. This phantom had the appearance of an old youth. However, the appearance was greatly different from that of the Soul Emperor. His features were far more fierce and diabolical than the Soul Emperor's, and his face was pale white without the least bit of depth, as if he was a 10,000-year-old corpse that had all its blood sucked out. Without a doubt, this was the strength of a totem-level abyssal left behind by the Soul Emperor. Lin Ming looked at this phantom and a cold light glinted in his eyes. He poured out all of his strength into this phantom, slowly breaking it apart. This phantom naturally wasn't able to resist Lin Ming and Xiang Mei. But, as the phantom's body broke apart, not only did it not have a frightened expression, but there was still that lightly taunting smirk hanging on his face. Lin Ming frowned. He placed his hands together and poured out the Azura Heavenly Tao and Holy Scripture laws. Bang! The phantom finally exploded, turning into countless fragments that floated into the void. However, that taunting expression was like a curse, still lingering in the void and not scattering for a long time. Lin Ming didn't blink an eye. He thrust out a hand and the phantom exploded once more. This time, it completely turned into the purest world strength that was refined by Lin Ming's energy. Lin Ming. Although Xiang Mei had just broken into true divinity and her strength had risen precipitously, the Soul Emperor's appearance still caused dark and gloomy clouds to envelop her heart. This was unrelated to her heart of martial arts, and it also wasn't because she was afraid. It was because she had followed the Soul Emperor for many years and was deeply aware of just how terrifying he was. I seem to have restored some of my previous life's memories, Xiang Mei quietly muttered. After breaking through to true divinity and undergoing a baptism of the world laws and divine chains of order, she had fatally touched upon the vast and boundless memories of her past self from 10 billion years ago. These memories contained the comprehensions of the life and death laws of her past life, as well as her fighting skills and even the cultivation methods she trained in. The memories were far too disorganized and convoluted. When Xiang Mei broke through to true divinity, she had only touched upon a small part of them and needed time to slowly sort them out. Even so, these memories would bring a massive advantage to her. Oh? What have you remembered? Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. Xiang Mei's memories were of crucial importance. Although Immortal Sovereign also knew of the events from 10 billion years past, he had perished far too early in the war between the races. After Immortal Sovereign died, the races of the 33 heavens still struggled against the Dark Abyss for tens of thousands of years. This was the part of history where the Azura Roadmaster and the races of the 33 heavens were finally able to force back the Abyssals, and as for the specifics of what happened here, Immortal Sovereign wasn't sure. And if Xiang Mei knew, then this would naturally be a great help to Lin Ming understanding more. However, Xiang Mei shook her head, saying, I cannot remember many details about the great calamity from so long ago. I only know that 10 billion years ago, my previous life underwent a blood sacrifice and used a divine tool to manifest the eternal wall and block out the Dark Abyss. In truth, my past life also left behind a single turning point for reincarnation. This could be called the 10th cycle of reincarnation. In my past life I was cold and arrogant, and even though I knew I would die in battle, I also hoped that I would be able to draw upon personally experiencing death to comprehend the life and death laws to a far more profound degree, and then after the 9th reincarnation, carve out a path for the 10th reincarnation. Like that, I would have been able to break through my limits, surpassing my father and even surpassing the Azura Roadmaster. But as for what happened afterwards, I do not know. Now, it seems that my 10th reincarnation failed. My memories were lost and my cultivation was abandoned, and I had to begin anew. Moreover, I don't know how, but I was discovered by the Soul Emperor and he knew of my true identity. The Soul Emperor has incredibly hidden depths. He trained me, but I'm afraid there is some unknown purpose behind it all. As Xiang Mei spoke to hear, Lin Ming's thoughts chilled. The Soul Emperor was unfathomably deep. Not only was he terrifyingly strong, but he had laid down a plot of the heavens and earth that spread out over 100 billion years. Compared to him, those true divinity overlords of the Spiritas, Saints, or Azura Road, were nothing at all. Even the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was lacking. Although the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was the ruler of the saints and had the great ambitions of swallowing all life in the 33 heavens, when compared to the Soul Emperor he was nothing at all. Not to mention anything else, just amongst the many ancient demon emperors that the Soul Emperor had locked in the Emperor Bon Si, if the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign were placed within, he would only be at the middle or upper reaches of them. Across a horrifying timespan of 100 billion years, even spreading into the last universal era, cruel and vicious elite demons had poured forth from the Dark Abyss, and there were dozens if not hundreds of powerful abyssals that were far stronger than the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign could hope to be. But, when one considered the weakened human race of the 33 heavens, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was far too formidable. Through the entire human race, they couldn't find someone that could run away safely in front of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, much less defeat him. And calculating the time, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign should have already emerged from seclusion. By now, he had likely swallowed up the karmic link between the 33 Heavens essence-gathering system and the human race. If so, then humanity was in an even more precarious position. Of course, to Lin Ming, this sort of karmic link of destiny had no influence. Whether it was in terms of laws or the energy saved within his body, he far surpassed the essence-gathering system. And even if the laws were imprisoned, Lin Ming could still break through with his strength. Now, the only things that Lin Ming dreaded were the Soul Emperor and Demon God's tomb. However, before he confronted them, he would need to return to the 33 Heavens. He had to solve the trouble around the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Facing the terrifying enemy that was the Dark Abyss, the infighting between the humans and saints no longer held any meaning. Of course, wanting the saints to believe him wouldn't be easy. Even so, Lin Ming didn't plan to try persuading them too much, because in the world of martial arts strength was all, strength would forever be a weapon countless times more powerful than words. I will return to the 33 Heavens, Lin Ming suddenly said. He looked at Shang Mei. Although he didn't say anything, his meaning was clear. He wanted Shang Mei to follow him. The Eternal Wall couldn't cage in the races of the 33 Heavens. Even though Lin Ming became a true divinity, it still wouldn't be a problem for him to pass. As for the bloodlines within Shang Mei, although they were convoluted, it was still her previous life that had formed the Eternal Wall through her blood sacrifice. Because she had been the one to lay it down, the Eternal Wall wouldn't imprison even the true divinity realm Shang Mei. Chapter 2192, Origin Amethyst Crystal. The world strength that swept through the Emperor Bone Sea began to slowly weaken over 3 days. Lin Ming and Shang Mei perfectly passed their trial. Originally, breaking through to true divinity meant that one would be a martial artist who stood at the highest echelons of the universe. Moreover, whether it was Lin Ming or Shang Mei, they both possessed enough talent to show disdain to all other rivals at their boundary. Their strength was already great enough that they could affect the future of the universe and alter the grand chess game of the world. However, Lin Ming also knew that this was only the first step in resisting the Soul Emperor. The Soul Emperor should currently be cultivating some sort of cultivation method, and once he finished, he would be able to perfectly control the Demon God's tomb. By that time, his strength would reach incomprehensible levels. The time they had was far too short. Once the Soul Emperor's cultivation method reached large success, he would learn of everything that occurred in the Demon God's tomb. At that time, Lin Ming would only be able to directly face the Soul Emperor in a life or death battle. Ripples spread through the void and the enchantment that created the small independent world disappeared. Lin Ming and Shang Mei appeared in the gaze of the many abyssals, a consummate pair of man and woman. Seeing Lin Ming and Shang Mei come out, Immortal released a long breath of relief. Then, a smile bloomed on his face. 1,000 years of effort, 10 billion years of waiting, at least none of this had passed in vain. Much thanks, Senior. Lin Ming and Shang Mei fell to their knees as they saw Immortal, deeply kneeling in respect. This was because to Shang Mei, Immortal could be called her true birth father, and since Lin Ming and Shang Mei could also be called husband and wife, then Immortal was Lin Ming's father-in-law. Moreover, whether it was the Holy Scripture laws that allowed Lin Ming to undergo a nirvanic rebirth after losing his source soul, or whether it was this abyssal ritual, Immortal had shown great graciousness to them. He was their teacher. Regardless of whether it was as a teacher or father, Immortal was more than worthy of this bow. Children, stand up. Immortal said, his expression filled with happiness and gratitude. But while he was happy at seeing such juniors, he was also worried. He knew that after Lin Ming and Shang Mei left, they would be faced with a truly terrifying enemy. The pressure on their shoulders was just far too heavy. Lin Ming stood up and looked at the distant 30-level demon pagoda as well as the over 100 demon emperors that existed across the shores of the Yellow Springs River. He bowed to them all. Especially the demon lord of the 30-level demon pagoda. He had awoken in order to help him and Shang Mei, and this was a kindness that Lin Ming would forever remember. Seniors, Junior will try his best in the future to rescue all of you from here. Lin Ming solemnly vowed. But, the only reply he heard was raucous laughter. Ha! Brat, I have already died, so how could you possibly rescue us? If you have the ability, then scatter my remnant soul, that will be true freedom. Ha, I do not expect you to rescue us. The only possible way is if you manage to break apart the rules of this world. In the future, when you step beyond divinity, bite out a piece of meat from that old freak and bring it here for us to eat, ha! The crowd of demons recklessly spoke. After being sealed in the dark and enclosed demon pagodas, they faced an unchanging environment for tens of billions of years. The pain of this was unthinkable. If a mortal were enclosed in a small black room for a month, they would turn crazy and even develop irrevocable mental issues. Even though martial artists had formidable wills, they would still start to turn mad after being caged in for tens of billions of years. Lin Ming was left speechless. He sighed inwardly. In truth, these many ancient demon emperors were locked here because they weren't able to resist the temptation that was eternal life, even if at the time they arrived they knew the Emperor Bonzi only contained an uncertain hope for them. Lin Ming didn't know whether or not eternal life should be pursued, but he deeply felt that eternal life actually didn't mean eternal happiness, it didn't mean eternal joy. Eternal life was not the highest pursuit of martial arts. The pursuit of martial arts was the heart. Lin Ming couldn't help but look at Xiang Mei. Currently, what Xiang Mei pursued was no longer eternal life, but instead what could truly touch her heart and move her soul. To cultivate to fulfill one's own heart, perhaps this was truly touching upon the peak of martial arts. But in reflection, what was one's heart? Perhaps that was to allow oneself, one's lovers, one's spouses, one's children, one's family, one's friends, one's people, to allow everyone to live in peace and happiness. Children, come with me. Immortal suddenly said. He turned towards the 33-level demon pagoda. Immortal Sovereign was originally the master of the magic cube. With the help of the magic cube and Lin Ming, the gates to the 33-level demon pagoda had been smashed open. But during the 1,000-some years that Lin Ming had gone into seclusion, potent world strength had gathered around the gates, superimposing upon itself in layers and evolving into shining demon runes. The runes connected together, causing the demon relief on the gates to look that much fiercer, as if the gates would close up once more. The laws in the Emperor Bonzi are truly dreadful. Lin Ming immediately thought. At this rate, the 33 demon pagoda that caged Immortal Sovereign would be sealed up again sooner or later. At this time, the three of them already stood firmly in the demon pagoda. Within the demon pagoda, everything was carved from black stone. This black stone had experienced a passing of innumerable billions of years and exuded the changings of times. Everything emitted the thick smell of history. Immortal Sovereign put out a hand. He said to Lin Ming, "Give me the magic cube." Lin Ming was startled for a moment but didn't question anything. He thrust out a hand and the magic cube appeared in his palm. Then, he respectfully handed the magic cube to Immortal Sovereign. The magic cube quietly floated in Immortal Sovereign's palm, slowly revolving. Immortal Sovereign sighed with emotion. In this universal era, 3 divine tools exist within the 33 heavens. They are the Stone of Eternal Life, Grand Mist Spirit Bead, as well as the Origin Amethyst Crystal. Origin Amethyst Crystal? Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. Without a doubt, this divine tool was the purple card. This was the first time that Lin Ming had heard the purple card's true name. When Lin Ming referred to the purple card in the past, he was only referring to the color and shape of the Origin Amethyst Crystal. Is it the divine tool that the Azura Road Master used in the past? Yes. Immortal Sovereign nodded. The Origin Amethyst Crystal might be a purple crystal form condensed from the source energies of this world. As for the Stone of Eternal Life and Grand Mist Spirit Bead, they are also similar. The 3 divine tools are instruments that exist on the same tier. If they are completely activated, they will evolve into a large universe, so they are in truth 3 world seeds. But, although these three divine tools are of the same tier, the reality is that they are divided into high and low. Lin Ming and Shang Mei were shocked. The three divine tools represented essence, energy, and divine, so how could they be divided into high and low? Seeing Lin Ming and Shang Mei's doubts, Immortal Sovereign explained, the three divine tools themselves don't differentiate into high and low. But, sometimes, the strength of a divine tool looks not at the divine tool itself, but at the person using them. Whether a divine tool can grow, the quality of that growth and the speed of that growth, all depends on the divine tool's experiences with the user. It depends on the user of the divine tool? A light lit up in Lin Ming's eyes. That's right. This is especially true when a user reaches the realm beyond divinity. In truth, this boundary already stands on the same level as a great universe, and this person can create and destroy worlds. At this time, the user themselves is capable of influencing the three divine tools. Before the Great Calamity erupted 10 billion years ago, the Origin Amethyst crystal had followed Azura for over 1 billion years. Similarly, the Stone of Eternal Life was also with me for several 100 million years. During these several 100 million years I was always together with the Stone of Eternal Life, constantly nourishing it with my strength and deepening its connection to my soul. As Immortal said this, Lin Ming was quietly shocked. Indeed, for a beyond divinity level existence to raise the magic cube like this, the magic cube was certainly out of the ordinary. Let alone the magic cube that was a world seed, even a true great world could be constantly reinforced and nourished. For instance, the demon god's tomb. This was a very high-level world, and over 100 billion years and all sorts of scheming by the Soul Emperor, its stability had increased by a large degree compared to the past. Looking at the three divine tools, the magic cube and purple card seemed far more powerful than the Grand Mist Spirit bead. And, the symbol for this would be that the magic cube and purple card had managed to breed their own artifact spirits, yet the Grand Mist Spirit bead hadn't. Thinking of this, Lin Ming's heart stirred. Ruby, come out. As Lin Ming's voice fell, a massive fog rose up from the magic cube and turned into the cute appearance of a red-clothed little girl. At this time, the little girl had a lost expression as she gazed at Immortal Sovereign. This black-robed man seemed familiar but also a complete stranger at the same time. Chapter 2193, Leaving Behind the Magic Cube. As Immortal Sovereign saw Ruby, he let out a sigh, infinite love and emotion filling his face. Although he was looking at Ruby, his gaze seemed to pierce through 10 billion years of time to see Ruby's past appearance. Your name is Ruby? Ruby stared wide-eyed at Immortal Sovereign with the curiosity of a child. She only thought that this man in front of her was familiar and he also had a nice smell exuding from him, just like her big brother Lin Ming. Ruby, that's a nice name. Immortal Sovereign gently patted Ruby's head. These years have been hard on you. Ruby didn't know just what Immortal Sovereign was trying to say. Uncle, what did you say? Nothing. Immortal Sovereign lovingly smiled and traced Ruby's head again. Then, he turned to Lin Ming and said, "Take good care of her." "I will." Lin Ming solemnly vowed. Immortal Sovereign sighed. He said, in the past, Ruby was the Stone of Eternal Life's world spirit. World spirit? Lin Ming was stunned. The so-called world spirit was the soul of a world. Mountains had mountain souls, seas had sea souls, stars had star souls, and weapons had artifact spirits. All things in existence, when all sorts of lucky chances coincided and after an incredibly long period of time passed, could develop wisdom. For instance, the ancient Elysium seal was one such example. Immortal Sovereign predicted that the Soul Emperor was the world spirit of the demon god's tomb. He appeared with the identity of Deep, seized the body of the Soul Emperor, and then took control of Flood. Not just that, but he controlled the two greatest influences of the demon god's tomb, the Deep Alliance and Flood Alliance. Even powerhouses like Shang Mei and Deep Child had been firmly grasped in his hands. Ruby, she seems to have also reincarnated, her memories have been lost. In that past war, her soul nearly turned to ashes. Immortal Sovereign casually stated. But Lin Ming could imagine just how heaven-shaking that war had been. The magic cube and the purple card went through the same war, and Fishy's experiences were likely similar to Ruby's. Both of them had suffered catastrophic losses in that war 10 billion years ago. Now, Fishy had returned to the purple card, which was the origin amethyst crystal. Hopefully she would be able to recover a little. Lin Ming prayed in his heart. Towards these two little girls with similar fates, he felt a deep sense of pity. In his eyes, these two little girls were living beings, no different from the races that lived in the 33 heavens. Child, stand. Immortal Sovereign said to Shang Mei. Shang Mei didn't know what Immortal Sovereign was about to do, but she obediently stood in front of him. Don't resist. As Immortal Sovereign spoke, he gently placed the magic cube between Shang Mei's eyebrows. The fist-sized magic cube began to rapidly shrink until it reached the size of a grain of rice. Then, it fell into the 9-revolution red lotus mark between her eyebrows. Lin Ming locked his sense on Shang Mei the entire time. He knew that the magic cube had submerged into Shang Mei's spiritual sea. To a martial artist, their spiritual sea was an extremely fragile yet important place. Once their spiritual sea cracked apart, a martial artist would suffer damage to their divine soul and perhaps even become an idiot. The magic cube was a divine tool of the soul. Once it entered a person's spiritual sea, it could erupt with a strength that could instantly shred the spiritual sea to shreds. However, because Lin Ming trusted Immortal Sovereign, he didn't say a word. He quietly looked on, wanting to see what Immortal Sovereign was trying to do. An incense stick of time passed. Immortal Sovereign's concentration was completely focused and his complexion was dignified. It was clear he was giving his full effort, and was even somewhat strained. After a while, the magic cube flew back out. In that instant, Lin Ming faintly felt that a source mark belonging to Shang Mei seemed to have quietly fallen into the magic cube. Senior, you. Lin Ming didn't know what Immortal Sovereign was trying to do. He seemed to be carving Shang Mei's soul mark into the magic cube. As for why he was expending so much effort to do so, Lin Ming didn't know. Martial World Novel at Read Novel Full. But Immortal Sovereign wasn't finished. He controlled the magic cube again so that it flew between Lin Ming's eyebrows and sank into his spiritual sea. Immortal Sovereign focused his concentration to leave behind Lin Ming's soul mark within the magic cube. Then, he brought out the magic cube. Lin Ming looked at Immortal Sovereign, a bit puzzled. Lin Ming, I asked you to bring out the Stone of Eternal Life today because I would like you to leave it here. Let alone Lin Ming, Immortal Sovereign's words even shocked Shang Mei. No one knew why he would make such a request. Currently, it was obvious that the Stone of Eternal Life would be more useful to Lin Ming. Lin Ming's strength had already reached the top levels of the universe, and there was still much room left for growth in his future. If there was the magic cube to help him, then he would have much more assurance to deal with the Soul Emperor. Senior, may you tell me the reason? When it came to Immortal Sovereign, Lin Ming felt a deep level of respect towards him. Not to mention that Immortal Sovereign was his elder, but he had also died in the great 10 billion years ago for the races of the 33 heavens and had established countless war merits. Just the Holy Scripture laws had helped him rise from the lowest valley of his life. There was also the 1,000-year process of the abyssal ritual that had allowed him to complete his final accumulations and break into true divinity. With all of these things, Lin Ming felt nothing but gratefulness towards Immortal Sovereign. This sort of benevolence couldn't even be described as being as heavy as mountains and rivers. Immortal Sovereign said, if you face the Soul Emperor, then the magic cube will be a powerful weapon. But in truth, upon reaching the boundary beyond divinity, it will not be able to display much of a wonderful role. When Lin Ming was at a low boundary, the magic cube was nearly invincible when it appeared. No matter how powerful a soul, they still seemed incredibly frail in front of the magic cube. But beyond divinity was different. This was a boundary where one could create and destroy worlds. The heights they stood were on a level on par with the great universe. Not just the current times, but even 10 billion years ago, Immortal Sovereign possessed the Magic Cube and the Azura Roadmaster possessed the Purple Card, yet even together they were only able to cause heavy losses to the Soul Emperor and hadn't been able to annihilate him. From this it could be seen just how terrifying the beyond divinity boundary was. Immortal Sovereign continued to say, the function of the Stone of Eternal Life mainly manifests in its supportive abilities, it is by no means purely a weapon. As for the reason I would like for you to leave it behind, it is because during the last span of years, I have been in discussions with the Demon Lord. Perhaps, we have means of dealing with that old freak so that it isn't easy for him to completely control the Emperor Bonesea. But in order to do this, we will need the support of the Magic Cube. But, Lin Ming said, a bit hesitantly. He was afraid that the Magic Cube would be stolen away by the Soul Emperor. However, as he thought about it more carefully, with Immortal Sovereign's skills and experience, there was no way he could commit such a low-level mistake. If their plan couldn't affect the Soul Emperor at all and would instead deliver a treasure to the Soul Emperor, then Immortal Sovereign would never carry out such a plan. I am only borrowing it. Your source soul mark is imprinted into the Stone of Eternal Life, and in the future I will have the means to return it to your hands. Immortal Sovereign confidently spoke these words. For some unknown reason, Lin Ming had a foreboding premonition in his heart. Immortal Sovereign and the Demon Lord would join together to resist the Soul Emperor. Just what sort of result would occur? Could they stand the ruthless retaliation of the Soul Emperor? Lin Ming felt that with the Soul Emperor's methods and his understandings of the soul, he likely had thousands of ways to refine a soul and thousands of ways to have one suffer unimaginable tortures. Thinking of this, Lin Ming was a bit worried. Senior, are you really sure you can contend with the Soul Emperor? In Lin Ming's impression, the Soul Emperor was far too strong in existence. Immortal himself was nothing more than a wisp of remnant soul, and the Demon Lord likely wasn't much stronger. Just what could they do to the Soul Emperor? How will we know if we don't try? Immortal Sovereign smiled. He didn't go into much explanation as to what he would do. Cultivate here for some time. Afterwards, you can leave. Lin Ming hesitated for a bit, and then reluctantly nodded. He deeply looked at the Magic Cube and left it behind. In his life, Lin Ming had obtained the Magic Cube at 15 years of age, and now was the first time that the Magic Cube was leaving him. The reason he did this came from his absolute trust in Immortal Sovereign. Chapter 2194, Leaving. The Dark Abyss's 12th layer, the Endless Sea. This was an unfathomably deep sea that extended onwards without end. The sea was a dark and deep blue that was thick and heavy, similar to mercury. The sea didn't have ordinary fish and shrimps, only powerful demon beasts and abyssals were able to survive here. At this time, the thick mist above the endless sea was as deep as a wall and as heavy as lead. A mortal couldn't even see a foot in this fog, and even a martial artist's divine sense would be hindered a great deal. Ayo! A sharp roar cut through the calm surface of the sea, echoing over the horizon. With it, the thick mist parted and dozens of figures hastily rushed out. These people all wore loose blue robes and had appearances no different from the races of the 33 heavens. They were the ancient race martial artists of the Dark Abyss. These ancient race martial artists seemed panicked and their movements were messy, as if they were being hunted down by something. Those damned beasts can also fly through the skies and shuttle through the seas. Their speed is also much faster than ours. If we cannot reach the home base fast enough, then they'll eventually overtake us. A middle-aged martial artist panted. He gripped symbol papers in his hands, and every now and then he would crush one and throw it behind himself. As the symbol paper exploded in the thick fog, a howl would follow. It was clear it was some sort of demon beast. Unfortunately, these yells weren't the screams of demon beasts being killed by the explosions of the symbol papers, but cries of pain from the demon beasts being injured. The middle-aged man's symbol papers were only meant to create some trouble for the demon beasts behind him and delay them for as long as he could. They simply couldn't kill them and only served to enrage them. But there was nothing else that could be done. Father, I remember that there is a nameless island in front of us. This island has towering trees, and these trees are also demon trees that are as hard as iron. If we lead those demon fish inside the dense forest, then they're sure to be slowed. The blue-clothed girl who spoke was the daughter of the middle-aged man. Although she was young, she had an extremely high status in the group, and this clearly stemmed from her powerful strength. As soon as she offered this suggestion, the ancient race martial artists felt their hearts sink. That forest of demon trees wasn't friendly to them either. Those demon trees could also devour people, and if they rushed into the forest, then it would be no different from entering the tiger's den after fleeing the wolves. If the fight continued like this, they were bound to be in an even more dire state. But the current situation didn't allow for any hesitation. If they didn't enter the demon tree forest, then there really wouldn't be any chance to survive. The howls behind them grew increasingly close. The thick mist above the sea was cut open by the demon beasts. A number of flat creatures that were dozens of feet long were racing over the sea, dragging a long python-like tail behind them as they appeared from the fog. These were clearly the demon fish that the blue-clothed girl spoke of. These demon fish were also one of the countless species of abyssals. However, their intelligence was far, far lower than most other abyssals. At this time, these demon fish would soon overtake the ancient race martial artists. If this were to continue, then they wouldn't even make it to the demon forest. The blue-clothed girl clenched her teeth and turned around to slash out with her sword. To turn around in a chase like this to attack was an incredibly dangerous move. It was easy to be surrounded by these flying demon fish and then be eaten up without even bones remaining. Moreover, the blue-clothed girl's sword strike wouldn't necessarily be able to harm these demon fish. The most it would do was delay them a little. The disparity in strength between the two sides was simply far too great. The moment that the blue-clothed girl struck out with her sword, the middle-aged man felt his heart skip a beat. He was afraid something would happen to his daughter. However, before he could cry out in alarm, a stunned expression filled his face. He stared helplessly on as after the blue-clothed girl slashed out her sword, the single sword light suddenly turned into an overwhelming wave that changed the winds and clouds, causing a rain of blood to fall down from the skies. The hundreds of demon fish were completely split open by this sword light. They were all torn apart, instantly killed without even time to scream. And after the demon fish died, even the fog above the sea was cut apart. Every sword light cut open sections that were a foot wide in the mist. Without the fog to block their way, the middle-aged man could see through the slits to dozens of miles away. And after several breaths of time, all the fog dissipated. As if it were blown away by a great storm, the entire sea appeared. The middle-aged man was shocked, and the blue-clothed girl was also startled. This sword light was clearly not sent out by them. Not to mention the might behind the sword light, just the color was different. The little girl's sword light was blue, but that overwhelming sword light just now was black. Could the black sword light be from a master who caught up to them from the home base? This thought flashed through the mind of the blue-clothed girl. Then, not too far away, she could see a black-clothed woman floating high in the skies. This woman had an appearance that neared perfection. Her long hair hung to her waist, and she unknowingly exuded a cold and lofty aura that seemed as if she were demanding all others stay at least 1,000 miles away. This sort of arrogant aura wasn't deliberate, but was merely something she was born with, making it hard for anyone to muster the courage to look at her. She had no sword in her hands. In truth, she hadn't used a sword just then either, she had only used her sword fingers. "This is the ancient race rebel army you spoke of," the black-clothed woman lightly said. It was only then that the ancient race martial artists discovered someone else had appeared in the skies at some unknown time. This man had looks that seemed carved by a saber. His eyes were like a sea of stars, unfathomably deep. After this man appeared, the black-clothed woman stood beside him, just a little bit behind. Whether it was in mindset or in action, this woman seemed to take this man as the lead. Such a terrifying woman took this man as a lead. Then this man. The ancient race martial artists were completely dumbfounded. No matter how they looked at it, this man and woman didn't seem like abyssals at all, but were similar to themselves in appearance. How was this possible? Could it be? A light lit up in the middle-aged man's mind. Many years ago, the leader of the ancient race rebel army, M.O. Eversnow, once had some old friend visit her. This person was said to be a man with strength no less than that of M.O. Eversnow. Was it him? As this middle-aged man was lost in his thoughts, the man actually closed his eyes and felt the salty sea breeze that wafted past him, his mind filled with emotions. 1,500 years. Just the abyssal ritual continued for 1,080 years. In addition to the 10 previous years, that was around 1,100 years. Afterwards, Lin Ming and Shang Mei didn't immediately emerge, but stayed in to cultivate for another 400 years to thoroughly consolidate their lower true divinity boundary. After that, with the help of Immortal Sovereign and the Demon Lord, they directly left the Demon God's tomb using a hidden passage and even passed through the Dark Abyss's 18th layer in a single journey and went all the way to the 12th layer. All of this happened without anyone noticing. And at this time, Lin Ming's true divinity level strength had completely stabilized. The 9 stars of the Dao Place was just a little bit away from opening the 8th Dao Palace. It could be said that Lin Ming's strength had undergone its greatest rise upwards in his life. He had been reborn. After returning to the Dark Abyss, Lin Ming planned to head back to the 33 heavens with the fastest speed possible. But before that he had to find M.O. Eversnow. He now knew the secrets of the Demon God's tomb and also knew of the upcoming war between the Dark Abyss and the 33 heavens. If M.O. Eversnow were to continue staying in the Dark Abyss, then it would be extremely dangerous for her. Lin Ming's thoughts were to leave the Dark Abyss together with M.O. Eversnow. Thus, he quickly found this place using a mark he had agreed with M.O. Eversnow beforehand. Within Lin Ming's current strength, as long as he was within a certain range, then his sense could lock onto M.O. Eversnow's position. After all, Lin Ming was familiar with the array formation she had arranged, so to him these array formations didn't block him much. The ancient races have truly declined. Shang Mei sighed. She already knew the situation of the ancient races, however, she hadn't known of her life experiences before, so the situation of the ancient races was irrelevant to her. Now, she knew that in her previous life, she was part of the primal god race. Whether it was the Azura Rod Master or Immortal Sovereign, both of them stemmed from the primal god race. Good fortune is forever changing. Lin Ming sighed with emotion. Then, he turned to the ancient race squad and said, "Is Miss M.O. present? Take me to see her." The ancient race martial artists glanced at each other. Then, the middle-aged man nodded and slowly said, "The leader, she is here." Chapter 2195, Returning to the 33 Heavens. The ancient race uprising had continued for over 1,000 years. For this revolt to continue for such a long time was mainly because of the opening of the Demon God's tomb, which had shifted the majority of the Demon Association's attention somewhere else. After the venture into the Demon God's tomb ended, all of the masters from the Flood Alliance and Deep Alliance had been utterly destroyed. To the numerous abyssal influences, this was simply a lightning strike from nowhere. For a long time after the exit to the Demon God's tomb opened, not a single higher abyssal came out. This left the numerous abyssal influences bewildered. Every large influence, including even the totem-level influences, had been severely wounded. And with the deaths of several true divinities and dozens upon dozens of Empyreans, this wasn't something that any influence could withstand. During such times, the Demon Association naturally didn't have the heart to pay attention to the ancient race uprising that wasn't on too large of a scale to begin with. Moreover, in these past years, the ancient race rebels had remained far more low-key. From the beginning, when they battled all around, they went quiet in order to recuperate and further develop themselves. M.O. Eversnow had inherited a part of Heavenly Empress Xuanqing's memories. In addition to some ancient race cultivation methods that Lin Ming provided, all of these things were distributed amongst the ancient race martial artists to practice with. In these past years, many new powerhouses appeared in the ancient race resistance. The headquarters of the ancient race Resist was deep in the endless sea. Before entering the headquarters, Mo Eversnow had sensed Lin Ming, and similarly Lin Ming sensed Mo Eversnow. The two met each other in a grand hall. Mo Eversnow could see through Lin Ming's cultivation with a glance. Deep astonishment rose up in Mo Eversnow's face. You broke into true divinity. Lin Ming had broken into the Empyrean realm at around 700 years of age. Afterwards, he spent 5,000 years in Tragic Death Valley to reach the peak of the Middle Empyrean realm. After that, he took another 1,500 years to break into true divinity. This degree of speed was simply defying the heavens. It is because of reasons concerning the demon god's tomb. It is a long story. Senior apprentice sister, let us speak as we go. Go? Go where? Mo Eversnow was slightly surprised. She didn't know what Lin Ming was referring to. Moreover, she was also puzzled about who Shang Mei was, standing near Lin Ming. Even Lin Ming had been surprised about Shang Mei's presence in the dark abyss. It was natural for Mo Eversnow to not know about her either. We will return to the 33 heavens, Lin Ming succinctly stated. The ancient race rebel army consisted of several hundreds of thousands of people. This amount of people could easily fit into Primordius' heavenly palace, and transferring them inside wouldn't be difficult either. And with Lin Ming's strength, he could easily help them pass through the horrifying energy storms around the Eternal God Wall to successfully escape the Dark Abyss. Lin Ming was already impatient to return. First, the Dark Abyss was too dangerous, and second, he was worried about humanity's current situation. And in truth, humanity's situation was just as Lin Ming worried, it wasn't good at all. 33 heavens, wild universe. Over 1,500 years had passed since Lin Ming left to go to the Dark Abyss. The good fortune Saint Sovereign left seclusion 600 years ago, and by that time, humanity's war campaign back into the divine realm had ended. Empyrean Divine Dream led humanity back into the wild universe, and by using the Azura Decree, another connection had been formed through the God Lamenting Wall, linking the wild universe with another neighboring universe. By relying on these two incomparably vast universes, humanity and the saints began a guerrilla war once more. Humanity had caused severe damage to the saints before the good fortune Saint Sovereign emerged from seclusion. Thus, even though it was impossible for humanity to directly face the saints now, the saints had limited manpower and resources. With this, the human forces were able to rely on the complex terrains within the wild universes to barely maintain themselves. This was a chaotic meteor belt with space storms and interstellar dust that blocked a martial artist's sense. Because this interstellar dust was able to block out the light of stars, this region was hard to locate in the broad universe. In fact, finding one such meteor belt was meaningless. In the wild universe, the number of similar meteor belts formed of interstellar dust was counted with trillions as the base unit. Every interstellar belt could extend for trillions of miles, and if one wished to search through all of them, it required transferring over a massive number of masters to carry out a full-on carpet search with their sense. Those with the ability to carry out such a search in a short period of time needed to have at least an Empyrean-level cultivation, and many Saint Empyreans had perished. Even so, Empyreans still needed to cultivate. It would be impossible for the saints to encircle humanity in the wild universe like they did the first time. In this meteor belt there were all sorts of complex spatial structures that formed a maze. In the center of this maze were layers upon layers of interconnected illusory magic arrays. These illusory magic arrays were incomparably mystical. Let alone an ordinary saint martial artist, even if a Saint Empyrean were to step inside, they would be left confused by the arrays and stranded within. Such potent illusory magic arrays were Divine Dream's handiwork. With her strength, it would be impossible for anyone to break through them unless the good fortune Saint Sovereign personally arrived. Read Martial World novel at Read Novel Full. In the last 8,000 to 9,000 years that humanity had resisted the saints, although humanity had suffered losses, they also grew by a great deal. This was particularly true when it came to their abilities to conceal themselves and lay out formations. In order to protect the growing seeds of humanity, Empyrean Divine Dream personally laid down hundreds of these illusory magic arrays through the wild universe, making it that much harder for the saints to find them. Like this, humanity continued to struggle with the saints. They managed to hold on, but there was a matter that caused dark clouds to hover in the hearts of all human martial artists. That was, when the good fortune Saint Sovereign had gone into seclusion, he had swallowed up the destiny of humanity's essence gathering system. Now, there was a divide that separated humanity from the essence gathering system Heavenly Tao. This divide didn't affect the existing strength of a martial artist, but it hindered them from furthering their cultivation. Now, when a human martial artist cultivated to the 9 divine shifts, they would feel incredibly strained. At the World King boundary, this resistance increased by hundreds and thousands of times, making it almost impossible to break through. As for lower Empyreans rising to middle Empyreans, and middle Empyreans rising to upper Empyreans, this process was originally not easy to begin with, but it had now become far more difficult. If this continued, then the destiny of humanity would eventually fade away to nothing. This was the so-called moment when a race's destiny reached its end. In the endless flow of history, it wasn't uncommon for a race to meet their demise because their destiny had reached its end. 10 billion years ago, the primal god race were unimaginably powerful, yet they too slowly withered away because their destiny was at its end. Compared to the primal god race, humanity was far from being able to compare, whether it was in strength or numbers. Thus it wouldn't be strange if humanity perished in this great calamity. Now, the young generations of humans had already started to wither and wane. Underneath this curse, martial artists with ordinary degrees of talent were only able to reach the divine sea realm. Proud children of humanity would be able to break into holy lords, but upon encountering the World King realm, all sorts of resistances would rise to meet them so that they weren't successful. An atmosphere of gloom and dread began to slowly spread amongst humanity. Although there was the protection of array formations, there were no new masters born within the younger generation, and it was difficult for the older generation to rise again in strength. Amongst the human powerhouses, one dead meant one less. If this continued for long enough, then humanity would be defeated without even being able to put up a fight. Within this belt of interstellar dust, within a small independent world, a youth sat in the void. This youth wore black clothes and had a spear harnessed to his shoulders. His looks were solemn and decisive, and the edges of his face were sharp and distinct. He gave off a swift and fierce aura. Looking at this youth carefully, he resembled Lin Ming somewhat. He was Lin Ming's eldest son, Lin Huang. At this time, 6 people were standing in front of Lin Huang: Xiao Moxian, Dragon Fawn, June Blue Moon, Hang Chi, Emperor Sakya, as well as a black-clothed girl with a beautiful appearance and skin as white as snow. This girl appeared around 17 to 18 years old. Her figure was slim and her legs were thick and round. Although she was beautiful, her weapon was a dark red 9-foot-long scythe. This scythe had an extremely fearsome shape. It was like 3 sharp fangs were stacked on the edge from large to small, but even the smallest blade was half a foot wide. When this weapon was contrasted with the girl's slender figure and her porcelain-like skin, it formed a strong visual contrast. This black-clothed girl had once encountered Lin Ming. Her name was Sable Ink, and she was Dark Demon Monarch's direct disciple. She was renowned within the younger generation of humanity and was called the second coming of Xiao Moxian. At this time, Dragon Fawn, June Blue Moon, Sable Ink, Lin Huang, Hang Chi, and Xiao Moxian were sitting at the ends of a 6-point star drawn in the void. As for Emperor Sakya, his hands were gathered together as he stood still in the center of these 6 people. An invisible momentum rose out from Emperor Sakya's body, forming a different world. In this world, there were Buddhist platforms and Buddhas reciting abstract truths. Beams of divine light soared through the skies, turning into flows of golden scriptures that snaked through the void. After 1500 years, Emperor Sakya had broken into true divinity. Chapter 2196, Imprisonment of the Divine Chains. Emperor Sakya had always been one of the most peak powerhouses of humanity. If it weren't for the great decline of humanity's martial arts civilization, his road of cultivation would have been far smoother. In the first great invasion that the saints launched in the wild universe, he had been at the Empyrean limit. But now, he had finally stepped into true divinity. Emperor Sakya was also the second true divinity of humanity. 7 people were sitting in a grand hall, silently. Emperor Sakya sat above a lotus throne, his 10 fingers weaving together as he produced Buddhist seal after Buddhist seal. This lotus throne was one of Mount Potala's magic tools. Mount Potala had an inheritance that extended for billions of years, and the throne was one of their most precious cultivation support items. When it came to magic tools, there were numerous offensive and defensive kinds. But when it came to auxiliary magic tools, they were actually quite rare because the array formations required to refine one were exceedingly complex. Hum. Golden light dazzled outwards on the lotus throne. The surrounding heaven and earth origin energy gathered around the 6 surrounding people. For a time, the light laws sparkled and supreme phantoms appeared behind these 6 people. A supreme phantom was the symbol of an Empyrean. Now, Dragon Fong, Xiao Moxian, Lin Huang, Heng Qi, Sable Ink, and June Blue Moon all had Empyrean level cultivations. The only difference was that they were in different small boundaries. In the great calamity of humanity, many human masters grew at an astonishing speed. For geniuses at the rank of Lin Huang or Sable Ink, they didn't need 10,000 years to become an Empyrean. 7 to 8,000 years was enough. 10,000 and several thousand some years was enough time for them to reach the upper Empyrean realm or even the limits of an Empyrean. Unfortunately, several hundred years ago the destiny of humanity had been imprisoned, so if these people wanted to make a breakthrough, they first had to break through the heavenly Tao's divine chains of order. However, wanting to break through these divine chains was easier said than done. When Lin Ming broke through to the 9 stars of the Tao Palace, he had relied upon an inestimable accumulation of destiny and treasures. In addition, Lin Ming and Xiao Moxian had dual cultivated, and while he was being chased down by Tian Mingzi and his back was against the river in a life or death situation, it was only during that critical moment that he broke through the heavenly Tao Tao diagram and obtained the power of the 9 stars. But amongst humanity, there really wasn't anyone capable of comparing with Lin Ming, and it was also difficult to reproduce the same situation that Lin Ming faced in the past. Thus, the proud elites of humanity each started to test different methods to make breakthroughs. For instance, within the Great Array formation managed by Emperor Sakya, 6 Empyreans attacked the bindings of the divine chains together. Within the Great Array, Emperor Sakya was only playing a supportive role. Whether or not one could break past the chains relied on a martial artist themselves. The higher a cultivation a martial artist possessed, the stronger their shackles would be. Ultimately, everything boiled down to one's talent, potential, as well as their determination in attacking chains of the heavenly Tao. All of this together decided if one was strong enough to defy the heavens and change their lives. 6 lights wove together into a star. Emperor Sakya emitted brilliant golden light from every acupoint. This light coalesced into a Buddha as the sound of chanting sutras lingered in the world, persisting for a long time. At this time, in the skies, the divine chains of order had formed a heavenly Tao diagram that pressed down on the heads of all present. The lotus throne beneath Emperor Sakya's feet revolved and a golden hand shot upwards. At the same time, the 6 Empyrean martial artists around Emperor Sakya each tried to break through their own respective cultivation bottlenecks. During these years that the essence-gathering system had been sealed away, they had all reached their peaks in their small boundaries. If it weren't for the divine chains of order hindering them, they would have already made their breakthroughs. Bang! The golden hand gathered together with the strength of the 6 people and violently crashed into the heavenly Tao diagram, causing it to shake. Again and again, the brutal strikes continued. Every time the Tao diagram dimmed, it was immediately supplemented by the golden divine chains of order that snaked around like pythons, adding more energy to the Tao diagram. If one attacked the heavenly Tao diagram, they would cause a backlash to occur. Xiao Moxian was fortunately able to withstand it. She had a deep background and possessed formidable potential, and she even possessed the body of a god beast. But as for Hang Chi and Sable Ink, they were shaken by the strength of the heavenly Tao. Their meridians were damaged by the shaking strength, and blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. Before their impact against the heavenly Tao diagram lasted for an incense stick of time, they had already exhausted themselves. If this continued, then they would suffer catastrophic and irreversible losses. They slowed down. Dragon Fong, June Bluemoon, and Lin Huang also slowed down a great deal. After an incense stick of time passed, Xiao Moxian stopped too. This time, their attempt to break past the chains of the heavenly Tao had been defeated. This result didn't leave them surprised, because they had already failed many times before this. But the repeated failures caused gloomy clouds to appear in their hearts. The several of them were already the elites amongst the human elites. If they weren't able to break through the chains of the heavenly Tao, then there was no need to mention other martial artists. During these years, many human martial artists had turned their gaze towards the body transformation system and began to cultivate the 8 inner hidden gates and 9 stars of the Tao Palace. This included Lin Huang. He placed even more of his time in cultivating the 9 stars of the Tao Palace. But humanity's body transformation technique had been abandoned for 3.6 billion years. How easy could it be to redevelop this cultivation system from the ground up? Moreover, even the body transformation laws were still partially blocked by the good fortune Saint Sovereign. If one wished to cultivate them, there was still tremendous resistance. In truth, after humanity's destiny had been shackled, besides relying on one's potential to break through, one could also rely on brute force. When a martial artist reached the upper true divinity realm and they possessed the corresponding laws, such as the swallowing laws or the curse laws, then they would have the ability to change the destiny of an ordinary race. If they could reach the realm beyond divinity, then they would have the ability to create and destroy worlds, and even influence the flow of destiny for an entire universe. Likewise, if one wished to use brute force to break through the chains of the heavenly Tao, they needed at least an upper true divinity level of strength to accomplish this. However, amongst the entire human race, no one had reached this boundary. When it came to the good fortune Saint Sovereign, whether it was Divine Dream or Emperor Sakya, they were both a great deal weaker than him. And with the essence gathering system locked away, it would be even more difficult for Divine Dream or Emperor Sakya to surpass the good fortune Saint Sun. At this time, Sable Ink swallowed a pill and began to meditate and restore herself. As she stabilized her tumbling blood vitality, she looked up at the heavenly Tao diagram that was gradually fading away into the skies. She couldn't help but sigh deeply and say, "Senior Lin Ming, he is truly an outstanding human hero." Sable Ink was well aware that when the 9 stars of the Tao Palace was sealed away in the past, Lin Ming had relied on his amazing potential, his determination, as well as Xiao Moxian's help to break past the heavenly Tao diagram. With Emperor Sakya assisting through an array formation and the 6 Empyreans joining forces, the difficulty of breaking into the 9 stars of the Tao Palace in the past was far greater than what these 6 people had to undergo now. Yet none of these geniuses were able to break past the barrier. Moreover, the more attempts they tried, the more they could feel how terrifying the bindings of the heavenly Tao were. Without feeling this for themselves, none of them would have had an inkling of how difficult this was for Lin Ming in the past. Lin Ming. As Xiao Moxian heard Sable Ink speak of Lin Ming, her gaze seemed to turn distant. Since Lin Ming left, he had spent 500 years in Tragic Death Valley and around 1,500 years in the Demon God's tomb. He had been gone for a full 2,000 years. Because Xiao Moxian hadn't cultivated in Tragic Death Valley for such a long time like Lin Ming did, her age hadn't yet reached 10,000 years. However, for most of this time, she and Lin Ming had been separated. In their first parting, 7,000 years had passed. In their second parting, 2,000 years had already passed. Moreover, this time, she didn't know if Lin Ming was alive or dead, or even if he was doing well. How could she not be worried? Lin Ming had gone to the dark abyss this time, and that place was just far too dangerous. Father will be safe. Besides Xiao Moxian, Lin Huang had just recovered. He gently held onto his mother's hand to comfort her. Xiao Maxian nodded. At this time, Sable Ink felt a bit embarrassed by her loss of decorum just now. She said, in the past, even when Senior Lin was being chased down by soaring feather God King, he was still able to create miracles. This time Senior Lin will surely return and his strength will definitely have risen. He should have steadily reached the upper Empyrean realm, or perhaps even reached peak Empyrean. Sable Ink's eyes flashed with reverence and admiration. There was no one in humanity that didn't respect Lin Ming. And Sable Ink and Lin Huang could be considered peers of the same generation. She had grown up listening to Divine Dream tell stories of Lin Ming, and when it came to respect and worship of the older generation, her fervor was naturally much more intense than that of those like Dragon Fang and June Blue Moon who came from Lin Ming's generation. Peak Empyrean. Xiao Maxian couldn't confirm this. In fact, Lin Ming's talent and potential mainly manifested in his ability to leap past boundaries to fight. In terms of cultivation speed, Lin Ming couldn't be regarded as an extreme genius, he was even somewhat slower than Xiao Maxian. When Xiao Maxian had broken into the Empyrean realm, Lin Ming had only been a half-step Empyrean, he wasn't much faster than Lin Huang. This was mainly because the laws that Lin Ming cultivated were far too high and their difficulty far too great. Now, Xiao Maxian was merely a little bit from reaching the peak Empyrean realm. It would already be wonderful if Lin Ming could reach the upper Empyrean realm. Chapter 2197, Meeting. We cannot keep depending on Benefactor Lin. Although we failed in breaking through the Heavenly Tao diagram this time, we have still gained experience. If this time fails, we have next time, and if next time fails, we will have the time after that. There will come a day when we break past these chains, and once those chains break, our martial arts accumulations will rise even further than before. Emperor Sakya slowly said. This could be a summary of the failures in breaking past the Heavenly Tao diagram this time. Emperor Sakya was well aware that they couldn't pin all their hopes on Lin Ming. Lin Ming's current cultivation was likely at the upper Empyrean realm, and to defeat the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign at this boundary was impossible. No matter how heaven-defying Lin Ming's talent was, there still wouldn't be a chance for him. Benefactor G. Emperor Sakya said as he saw Xiao Maxian appear a bit listless. He wanted to say some words of comfort but didn't know just where to start. I'm fine. Xiao Maxian waved her hand. I understand that Lin Ming won't return for a long time, but I'm simply a bit worried since I haven't received any news about him in such a long time. With what Xiao Maxian knew of Lin Ming, his character was firm and stubborn, and once he decided on something he would stick to it until the end. Now that he had gone out adventuring, she wondered if he would be able to cultivate enough to contend with the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign when he returned. However, to resist the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was easier said than done. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign possessed immeasurably deep strength to begin with, and now that he had swallowed humanity's destiny, his strength had likely taken another step forwards. And in the 33 heavens, besides the sole emperor who had never acted and whose strength no one knew, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was an absolutely invincible existence. If Lin Ming wanted to surpass the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, he would likely need a considerably long period of time. Like this, she might not see him for at least another 2,000 to 3,000 years. Moreover, the essence gathering system had been blocked by the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. Would Lin Ming's breakthroughs be hindered by this? Father will surely be able to break past the chains of the Heavenly Tao. Lin Huang confidently said. He could sense what Xiao Maxian was thinking. Lin Huang's reverence and admiration of Lin Ming had already reached unreasonable degrees. Brother Lin can even break past the 9 stars of the Tao Palace, so there shouldn't be any problems with the essence gathering system's Heavenly Tao. The likelihood is that his cultivation speed will be slowed down a little, but to Brother Lin, this might not be a bad thing. There are no chains that can cage in a true dragon. June Blue Moon quietly commented. As for me, I am looking forward to Lin Ming returning and watching him break through the shackles of the Heavenly Tao with my own eyes. Perhaps I can even gain some enlightenment. Dragon Fawn said as he looked up at the vanishing heavenly Tao diagram in the skies. As the spatial ripples faded away, there was a deep sense of unwillingness in his heart. Let everything continue on its natural course, Xiao Moxian silently said. But at this time, her body shook. The pill bottle that was in her hand tumbled to the ground, shaking until the medicinal pill within tumbled out. Everyone around Xiao Moxian was startled. With her strength, it was naturally impossible for a pill bottle to slip out from her hands. Mother, what is it? What is it? Everyone was concerned. Emperor Sakya had already stood up, his hand tracing his spatial ring. His expression was dignified. During this extraordinary period of time, even they weren't safe within Divine Dream's illusory magic arrays. There was a high chance that there could be an enemy attack. Xiao Moxian touched her chest and took out an old string necklace. This necklace was the 1,000-mile heart link that allowed Lin Ming to find Xiao Moxian when he went to the wild universe. The 1,000-mile heart link was refined through the divine runic arts, and because of Xiao Moxian using it too many times in the past, its energy had been used up and the divine runic symbol within had disintegrated. But before Lin Ming left, he had used his divine runic arts to transform the 1,000-mile heart link. Not only did Lin Ming draw up a new divine runic symbol, but he also strengthened its function. In the past, Xiao Moxian had only been able to communicate with Lin Ming in a one-way channel, but now they could communicate both ways. This was to avoid a situation like in the past, where Lin Ming wasn't able to immediately locate Xiao Moxian after arriving at the wild universe. Otherwise, if Lin Ming were to return to the wild universe and still had to look for her in the endlessness of space, then that would just be giving himself more trouble. Just now, Xiao Moxian had felt a shaking within the 1,000-mile heart link. And to be able to commune through the 1,000-mile heart link, there was only one person, Lin Ming. Lin Ming, he has returned. Xiao Moxian looked at the 1,000-mile heart link in her hands with disbelief, her voice filled with a hint of hesitation and uncertainty. Everyone was startled. Before they could respond, the 1,000-mile heart link in Xiao Moxian's hands began to glow with a dim light. Everyone could see this light, but only Xiao Moxian could hear the sound that transmitted from the 1,000-mile heart link. It really was Lin Ming. Lin Ming had returned. Benefactor Lin, he has already come back? Emperor Sakya was stunned. He originally thought that after Lin Ming left, he wouldn't return until he reached a level where he could contend with the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Otherwise, there was no meaning in returning. But only 2,000 years had passed, this was far too early. Father shouldn't have encountered trouble, right? Lin Huang muttered, a bit worried. Perhaps Senior Lin was thinking of his family and was afraid that you were worrying over him. The one who spoke was Sable Ink. Her voice was pleasant and her words warmed Xiao Moxian's heart. Indeed, during all these years, she was worried about Lin Ming. He is safe, Xiao Moxian happily said. She felt as if a giant stone had been lifted from her heart. Unfortunately, Divine Dream went into seclusion to impact the middle true divinity realm, so we cannot rashly disturb her. Hang Qi. You contact Vast Universe and Dark Demon Monarch to hurry here. Tell them to prepare a welcoming banquet for Lin Ming. Emperor Sakya excitedly said. Many important figures of humanity were gathered at this base. As for others, they could come from nearby bases. The return of the human sovereign Lin Ming was an important event for humanity. There is no need to prepare a welcoming banquet for now, he has already arrived. As she spoke, Xiao Moxian began to quickly hurry outside the hall. He's already here? Emperor Sakya said, a bit puzzled. It had to be known that there were layers upon layers of illusory magic arrays outside their base, and these array formations were all personally laid down by Empyrean Divine Dream. Because of the 1,000-mile heart link, Lin Ming was able to easily locate their position. But he might need to spend some effort getting past the illusory magic arrays. Everyone hurried to follow her. As they flew outside the hall, they saw that around 10 miles away in the void, a black-clothed man stepped forwards. These 10 miles was crossed in a single step. He arrived in front of them. This man was Lin Ming. Lin Ming. Father. Senior Lin. Several people cried out together. Xiao Moxian's breath quickened and her eyes began to glisten. After a 2,000-year parting, she was able to see Lin Ming stand safely in front of her. This was more important than anything. Senior Lin's cultivation. Sable Link was dumbfounded. When Lin Ming first returned, Xiao Moxian was too excited, so she didn't pay too much attention to this, but as for Sable Link and Lin Ming's other admirers, the first thing they noticed was his cultivation. At this time, from Lin Ming's body, she could clearly feel a terrifying aura that was still able to shake her mind and soul while being suppressed. It was like the Lin Ming in the skies had become as deep as the universe, filled with overwhelming potential and strength that no one could fathom. Could this be the true divinity realm? How is this true divinity? Everyone was shocked. Let alone Emperor Sakya, Dragon Fawn, and Hang Qi, even Lin Huang, who respected Lin Ming the most, still couldn't believe this. True divinity was an extremely harsh threshold on the road of martial arts. Before the great calamity of the divine realm erupted, humanity's martial arts civilization had declined and they lost their methods to break into true divinity. Because of this, for the last 3.6 billion years there hadn't been a single true divinity appear. No matter how talented a genius, they still fell before this threshold. Although the road to true divinity had been opened, 2,000 years ago when Lin Ming left, he had only been a lower Empyrean. To return as a true divinity after this time was far too exaggerated. This sort of cultivation speed couldn't even be described as heaven-defying. Lin Ming, how could you break through so quickly? If you break through at such a speed, will your foundation be unstable? This isn't a consideration of whether one's foundation is steady. Even if he ignored his foundation, he still couldn't break through so quickly. Moreover, how could someone with an unstable foundation break into true divinity? For a time, everyone was confused. Moreover, several hundred years ago, the good fortune Saint Sovereign had imprisoned humanity's destiny. Making breakthroughs had become even more difficult. Lin Ming wasn't surprised by everyone's responses. He explained, when I left, although it was for 2,000 years, I was in tragic Death Valley for 500 years. Those 500 years were similar to 5,000 years, so in truth I have been gone for 6,500 years. 6,500 years? Hearing this explanation, some people were less puzzled. But this was still difficult to accept. To go from an Empyrean to true divinity in 6,500 years was far too short a time. The laws that Lin Ming cultivated in particular were incredibly complex and profound. Although they were potent, they required a great deal of time. Every breakthrough needed a massive accumulation of energy. Chapter 2198, Talks with Good Fortune. After Lin Ming returned, the various human powerhouses began to arrive from all directions. This was because the saints had weakened and their ability to block out the universe was far inferior to the first time they came to wage war in the wild universe. As long as they were careful, Empyrean-level masters could freely move about in the starry skies. The master of the base that Lin Ming returned to was Xiao Moxian. As the master of this land, Xiao Moxian was responsible for setting up a banquet to greet the other masters of humanity as well as help Lin Ming prepare. During this banquet, Lin Ming was in the leading spotlight. As one of humanity's leaders, he naturally stood in the highest position and was the focal point of the audience. Shang Mei also followed Lin Ming as he returned, but she didn't make a public appearance, she only privately met with Xiao Moxian. Xiao Moxian had already heard Lin Ming tell her about what happened between him and Shang Mei 2,000 years ago. When it came to Shang Mei, it was simply extremely difficult for Xiao Moxian to produce any close and intimate feelings towards her. Even so, Xiao Moxian still gratefully thanked Shang Mei, because without her she wouldn't have been able to see Lin Ming again. As for Shang Mei, she felt similar towards Xiao Moxian. Although she was willing to stand behind Lin Ming and support him, it was still hard for her to lay down her cold and arrogant pride and contact others on her own initiative. Thus, Xiang Mei and Xiao Moxian only exchanged several greetings and rounds of small talk before separating. Xiang Mei sat in meditation alone. As for Xiao Moxian, she began to greet the guests in the grand hall. However, as Xiao Moxian left, Zhou popped her head out and grinned towards Xiang Mei. "Is that beautiful auntie just now big brother Lin Huang's mother? Wow, daddy is really a flowery playboy, all his wives are as pretty as flowers," Zhou said, pursing her lips. During these past years, Zhou also grew. Beneath Xiang Mei's careful guidance, her cultivation increased at a mind-boggling speed. Moreover, because she withstood the baptism of the heavenly Tao when Lin Ning and Xiang Mei broke into true divinity, Zhou's awareness of the laws far surpassed anything her contemporaries could hope to accomplish. The good fortune Saint Sovereign swallowing humanity's destiny also couldn't hinder Zhou's cultivation. One reason was because Zhou was not purely a human, and a second reason was because the laws that Zhou cultivated could not be summed up in humanity's essence-gathering system alone. The height she stood at had already surpassed the 33 heavenly Daos. Xiang Mei looked at Zhou and smiled. She gently traced Zhou's head and said, "I did not come together with your father because he is some flowery playboy." "Then why?" Zhou crooked her head. "Probably because of fate," Xiang Mei quietly said, sighing. In truth, even up until now, she had never been able to rid herself of the word fate. "Mama, it's really lively outside. Did you want to attend the banquet?" Zhou asked again. Xiang Mei shook her head. "I won't go, but you should go to say hi to your father." In truth, ever since returning to humanity with Lin Ming, Xiang Mei found it difficult to integrate herself into this environment. Whether it was the human Empyreans or Lin Ming's friends, or even someone like Xiao Moxian who Lin Ming completely trusted, she still felt a deep divide and lack of understanding between them. Only with Mo Evers now could Xiang Mei chat for a while. It was as if she didn't belong on this world. However, this wasn't a problem to Xiang Mei. She was used to being alone and used to being lonely. She didn't need to socialize with others to be happy, and besides Lin Ming, there was no one else who she needed to accompany her. She had her own road, a road that she had to walk down, a road that she had no choice but to walk down. Lin Ming's welcoming banquet was also the celebration banquet for Lin Ming breaking into true divinity. There were 12 different banquet tables arranged in the grand hall. In these complicated wartimes, there weren't many seats, but those that arrived were all overlords of the human race. For instance, Dark Demon Monarch, Skyrend Godlord, Emperor Sakya, Empyrean Vast Universe, Great Limitless Buddha, and over 20 other human Empyreans had gathered here. Lin Ming's cultivation speed had left everyone shocked. But at the same time, this also left them worried. With Lin Ming's cultivation speed being so bewilderingly quick, would his strength and comprehension of laws have been able to follow behind? Originally Lin Ming took 7,000 years to become an Empyrean. Although this was amongst the peak speeds of humanity, it couldn't be called first place. However, Lin Ming had then become a true divinity at 13,500 years of age. This speed cast off all human martial artists behind him. As the banquet carried on for a quarter hour of time, Skyrend Godlord was the first to speak. "Lin Ming, now that you've returned, how do you plan on dealing with the saints?" Skyrend Godlord's words caused everyone to unconsciously set down their glasses and chopsticks and look towards Lin Ming. This was the most important matter that they cared about in coming to Lin Ming's welcoming banquet. After Lin Ming broke into true divinity, no one knew where the limits of his strength were. Without having reached the true divinity realm, no one knew the disparity between the small boundaries of true divinity. Now, people were worried that since Lin Ming had just broken into true divinity and had used such a short period of time to do so, could his foundation be unsteady or would his accumulations be lacking? After all, the good fortune Saint Sovereign was a true divinity of the older generation and he had also made considerable progress in the recent past. It was impossible to predict just what levels his strength had reached. In a situation where no one understood Lin Ming's strength and the good fortune saint's sovereign strength, it was naturally difficult for anyone to judge what the current situation would be like. They could only ask Lin Ming what he planned to do for his next step. Lin Ming put down his chopsticks and thought for a moment. At this time, Vast Universe said, "The current war between humanity and the saints has fallen across several universes and the field is far too large. It isn't something that can be clearly explained in a few words. Lin Ming, I think you don't need to speak out now, but you can take your time to carefully consider your next move." With the great enemy before them and humanity's destiny on the wane, the various leaders of humanity didn't have any desire to taste the delicious spirit foods laid out before them. They began to discuss the current war situation. "I think that Your Majesty the human sovereign should go into seclusion for some time and further consolidate your foundation." The one who spoke was Dark Demon Monarch. Although he came from a demonic background, he had a gentle and scholarly appearance and his tone of voice was extremely respectful. But the good fortune Saint Sovereign has blocked the destiny of my race, and now the younger generation is fraught with difficulties when they try to cultivate the essence gathering system. Even in the body transformation system, it is hard for them to make progress in such a short period of time. If this continues to drag on, then the saints won't even need to do anything for my human race to be destroyed. Skyren Godlord looked at Lin Ming with worry on his face. He only hoped that Lin Ming could suggest something, anything that could slightly change the current situation. Currently, humanity was in a terrible spot. And whether it was Dark Demon Monarch, Great Limitless Buddha, Divine Dream, or Emperor Sakya, no one could offer an effective solution. It was as if humanity was already pressed into a dead end by the saints with no way out. The situation we face is indeed as Skyren Godlord says, but it is exactly at this moment that we cannot hurry ourselves. If we do, there is a possibility that our weaknesses will be exposed and the saints will ruin us, or even exterminate us. The one speaking was Emperor Sakya. He felt that throwing out such a sharp question towards Lin Ming was unfair, as it would be difficult to come up with any immediate countermeasures. No matter what happened, Lin Ming's return still meant that one of humanity's top powerhouses had come back, and at least they wouldn't be completely crushed in the face of the good fortune Saint Sovereign. As Emperor Sakya spoke, he also looked at Lin Ming, wanting to seek out his opinion. The current Lin Ming had already become the pillar of the human race. Lin Ming faintly smiled. Senior Dark Demon Monarch suggested that I should go into seclusion to consolidate my boundary, but the truth is that I have already completed this step. After breaking into true divinity, I still remained in a cultivation holy land for 500 years and my foundation has long since stabilized. As Lin Ming said this, many human overlords felt their hearts skip a beat. It seems that Lin Ming had broken into true divinity 500 years ago. In other words, when he was 13,000 years of age, he had completed his breakthrough. As for something that could be called a cultivating holy land for Lin Ming, it was likely something truly extraordinary. In the 1,500 years that I was in the Dark Abyss, there was no news of me, and I apologize for causing everyone to worry over me. Lin Ming glanced at Xiao Moxian, a little guilt on his face. Xiao Moxian smiled, casting a peaceful look towards Lin Ming. In truth, Lin Ming really didn't have any means to send Xiao Moxian a message. During the days he was in the Dark Abyss, he passed most of them in the completely sealed-off demon god's tomb. Since I have returned to humanity today, I naturally possess the confidence and ability to face the saints. As Lin Ming spoke to here, everyone was shaken. They all held absolute faith in Lin Ming, and if Lin Ming said he had the confidence and ability to face the saints, he naturally wouldn't be casually joking about this. Then what do we do? Skyrend Godlord said. Because of his excitement, his beard was already shaking. I just need everyone to support me. As for me, Lin Ming paused for a moment, and then slowly and clearly said, I plan to set up talks with the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Lin Ming's words left the entire audience speechless. Chapter 2199, Sending a Letter. You want to set up talks with the good fortune Saint Sovereign? This is... The human rulers present were all shaken by Lin Ming's words. They couldn't help but glance at each other with dismay, and even the wine in their glasses spilled out. The good fortune Saint Sovereign was expending all efforts to find Lin Ming, and yet Lin Ming wanted to deliver himself on his own initiative. In a war between races, if one wished to set up talks, then both sides had to have equivalent strength. Otherwise, who would want to discuss anything? They would simply eliminate the other party and be done with it. Could it be that Lin Ming had confidence he could face the good fortune Saint Sovereign? Realizing this point, everyone was left speechless. Lin Ming, you want to fight the good fortune Saint Sovereign in a showdown? Empyrean Vast Universe asked after some time. In his opinion, setting up talks was no different from a challenge to a final battle. Do you have the confidence to defeat the good fortune Saint Sovereign? Xiao Maxian asked, a bit of worry tinting her voice. She believed in Lin Ming, but for Lin Ming to fight the good fortune Saint Sovereign after having just broken into true divinity was far too risky. I don't know what boundary the good fortune Saint Sovereign has reached. If possible, I would like to end this war with words alone, and not battle. But things don't always go as I hope they do. Lin Ming casually said. No one thought that right after Lin Ming returned, his solution to deal with the saints would actually be so simple. The decision of Lin Ming setting up talks with the good fortune Saint Sovereign was passed down. Although Xiao Maxian, Vast Universe, and the others were all worried about him, Lin Ming still possessed an extremely high degree of authority within the human race. He had created far too many miracles in the past, and no one would think of questioning him, let alone believe that there was something he couldn't accomplish if he decided on it. Stepping back, even if the talks weren't successful, there still shouldn't be some disastrous ending. If Lin Ming faced good fortune, then even if he was at a disadvantage, he should still be able to withdraw safely. Thinking of this, many human rulers felt themselves calm down a little. Afterwards they settled on a time and place for the talks to occur, and then news of Lin Ming wishing to set up talks with good fortune was sent out. The ones passing on information were messenger puppets. In truth, these puppets were in the shape of small spirit ships. After being carefully refined, they could carry out great void shifts and even change directions midway so no one could find out where they came from. Over 1,000 of these messenger puppets were sent out to the areas where the saints had accumulated in large numbers. Then, around half a month later, the messengers reached the saints. In an elegant garden that hung high in the skies. In the vast and infinite void of space, a garden extended outwards for hundreds of miles. Spirit plants grew everywhere, with birds and flowers mixing in amongst all the wonders of the heavens and earth. The edges of the garden were covered by an array formation. If one took a single step outwards, they would be met by the deep and infinite starry skies. This sort of scene simply shocked the mind. Within this garden were several floating celestial mountains. On one celestial mountain, there were blue lotuses that blossomed as large as pans. The flower petals shined like jade, and sitting atop one of these lotuses was a blue-clothed woman. This woman wore a blue dress that perfectly contrasted her slim figure. Her eyes were long and slender, but her complexion was slightly pale, making her seem as if she were a bit ill. The woman's hair was wrapped into a bun, and inserted within this bun were 3 beautiful feathers. These added to the mysterious and illusory aura that surrounded this woman. She was Soaring Feather God King's most favored disciple, Fairy Blue Lotus. Ever since her suffering under Lin Ming's hands, Fairy Blue Lotus had gone into seclusion. During these years, her cultivation had rapidly risen. She didn't have hopes of catching up to Lin Ming, but she still tried hard while taking Lin Ming as her goal. Sometimes, by setting up an impossibly high goal, even if one couldn't reach that goal, they could still display their potential to the peak. Soaring Feather God King had already recused herself from the war between humanity and the saints. As for Fairy Blue Lotus, she had arrived in the wild universe by herself. The reason for this was because the universes of the saints were far too peaceful and bland. Fairy Blue Lotus could find no competition amongst her peers, thus staying in the uneventful and boring Saint Convocation heavens by herself was no different from going into seclusion alone. Because of that, Fairy Blue Lotus came to this battlefield and wanted to feel out her own road of martial arts in battle. To be able to see armies battle to the death and even see peak masters fight was a sort of inspiration to her. Unfortunately, humanity had gone into hiding and it had been a long time since they battled the saints. During these days, Fairy Blue Lotus had been bitterly cultivating atop this celestial mountain. On this day she suddenly opened her eyes from meditation. She saw that beyond the enchantments of the floating garden, there was a 3-foot-long puppet bird flying towards her location at rapid speed. This was a messenger puppet. Fairy Blue Lotus's thoughts stirred. Her figure flashed and she appeared outside the enchantment. She reached out her hand and easily grabbed the puppet. As she read the message within, she felt her heart shake. What is going on here? The puppet messenger carried with it an information jade slip, and the message recorded within was extremely simple. There were only a few short lines that dictated the time and place for talks with the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. And the one who would be in the talks was human sovereign Lin Ming. Lin Ming wanted to set up talks with the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. Fairy Blue Lotus's jaw dropped open. She felt as if her brain had been fried. Over 2,000 years ago was when Fairy Blue Lotus first encountered Lin Ming. She thought Lin Ming was her opponent and led the Legion of Famine to encircle him. However, what followed proved that she and him were on completely different playing fields. And afterwards, he broke into the Empyrean realm and managed to fight to a draw with her own master, Soaring Feather God King. Although she couldn't help but be sincerely convinced of Lin Ming's strength, she still didn't believe that Lin Ming had gained the strength to fight with the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign in a mere 2,000 years. And the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was an existence that could truly be described as unfathomably deep. As for setting up talks, that was in truth no different from setting up a showdown. Unless Lin Ming's true self didn't appear. But if Lin Ming's true self wasn't going to appear, then he might as well have transmitted the full message with the messenger puppet. Why would he bother deciding a time and place to set up talks with the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign? Could it be that Lin Ming was already confident that he could fight the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign? Fairy Blue Lotus felt this was completely impossible. 2,000 years ago Lin Ming had a lower Empyrean cultivation. So, what boundary could he have reached now? Could he really be so naive as to think that someone at the limits of an Empyrean could defeat the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign? She held tightly onto the puppet messenger as she lost herself in thought. After a moment, she decided that she needed to report this new event to her own master first, Soaring Feather God King. It wasn't just Fairy Blue Lotus, but many other Saint Masters obtained this message at around the same time. This included numerous Saint Empyreans as well as elite juniors like High Sun and Dark Moon. As everyone read through the puppet messengers, they simply felt as if this was a joke being played on them. Or, it was likely a trap. They didn't really believe that Lin Ming would show up on that day to engage in talks with the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. Even if he had 100 times the courage, he still wouldn't be that brave. If he really did come, then that wouldn't be brave at all, but instead the height of stupidity. Do you think this is humanity's trap? At this time, many Empyreans had gathered around the Good Fortune Saint Palace and began speculating on the intentions of the humans. Just what sort of trap could the humans possibly set up? Right now the only true divinities amongst the humans are Divine Dream and Emperor Sakya. In addition, although Lin Ming hasn't reached the true divinity realm, he still has the strength of one. By now he should be the strongest person in the human race. But even with those three joining forces, do you really think they could lay down any trap that could possibly threaten His Majesty, the Saint Sovereign? Even if the humans were given 1,000 years to lay down layers of grand array formations, they wouldn't be able to wound a single hair on His Majesty. Indeed. What you said is right, but still, this is strange. Why would the humans be so bored that they would waste time like this? Or, could it be that they have been pressed down so hard by us for all these years, and also because His Majesty the Saint Sovereign has swallowed up their destiny, that they have begun to become impatient and have decided to use such weak methods like this to retaliate? Humph, the human race shouldn't be so bored as to do this. But no matter what their plan is, it's impossible for Lin Ming to show up that day. That person's strength is amazing and his rate of growth is too fast. He's nothing but a thorn in our side and the greatest disaster that could descend in the future. For someone like him, it's impossible that he could be so stupid. I can't figure out why the humans are doing this. As for whether or not this is a trap, I believe all of you are far too worried. Let alone the humans, not even the Spiritas could do anything if they joined in. As long as we investigate beforehand, then it will be fine. Moreover, His Majesty the Saint Sovereign can use his sense to probe from a distance. If there is any sign of a trap, he will be able to find clues. The many Saint Empyreans were left dumbfounded. They analyzed the messenger puppets and speculated on the reason that they were sent out, but in the end they couldn't figure out what the humans were intending. And at this time, whether it was Soaring Feather God King or Astral Vault God King, they had also obtained the news. Interesting, how interesting. Astral Vault God King rubbed his chin, excitement brewing within him. Lin Ming wanted to set up talks with Good Fortune. He also didn't believe that Lin Ming's strength could grow so quickly, but this didn't stop him from looking forwards to this event. He wanted to see just what Lin Ming and the humans were planning to do. It looks like I will need to make a trip to the wild universe. Astral Vault God King said, anticipation thick in his voice. Although he had withdrawn from the war between humanity and the saints, this didn't mean he couldn't go to watch the show. Chapter 2200, Day of the Meeting. Within the Good Fortune Saint Palace, in a golden hall, a tall and powerfully built middle-aged man was sitting upon an opulent throne. This throne was forged from eternal stone. The seat was 10 feet wide, and as the man sat here, he seemed to sit upon all beings in existence, making it nearly impossible to look up to him. His eyes were filled with a disdainful indifference, as if nothing in the world could possibly cause his heart or mind to waver. This man was the ruler of the saints, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. At this time, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was holding a jade slip in his hands, no joy or anger evident on his face. He had already looked through the contents of this jade slip. It held a message that Lin Ming wished to set up talks with him. And in this golden hall were many saint race powerhouses. Of those that could stand here, even the ones with the lowest cultivation were at the Middle Empyrean realm. Everyone could see the jade slip in the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's hand. They originally thought that this was a meaningless message, but they never imagined that the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign would suddenly take it out at this time. They didn't say anything. The matter with the humans sending out these jade slips was puzzling, but since the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had already seen it, it was naturally up for him to make the decision on whether he would want to attend. 3 days from now, you will all follow me to the Hidden Dragon Galaxy. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign simply said. The Empyreans present were stunned. The Hidden Dragon Galaxy was the meeting place designated in the jade slip. They never thought that the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign would really decide to attend. Your Majesty Saint Sovereign, you really intend to go? The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign didn't respond. He simply waved his sleeves and left, leaving the many Saint Empyreans looking at each other with looks of dismay. It seemed that the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign truly planned on attending. But what if the humans didn't come at that time? However, no one dared to defy the orders of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. Thus, 3 days later, the many Saint Empyreans set off from the Good Fortune Saint Palace. Ha, Soaring Feather, I knew you would return too. Astral Vault had already guessed that Soaring Feather would come. Casting out his sense, he soon found her. They hadn't seen each other for 2,000 years. Beside Soaring Feather God King was Fairy Blue Lotus. As for Astral Vault God King, he had also brought his 2 disciples, Dark Moon and High Sun. I naturally cannot miss such a grand occasion. Soaring Feather faintly smiled. Let's go first. Great. Soaring Feather and Astral Vault only had a SOSO relationship with the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign and didn't plan on joining his group. Like this, the Good Fortune Saint Palace, Soaring Feather, Astral Vault, as well as many other Saint race influences all started to head towards the Hidden Dragon Galaxy. When it came to this, the Empyreans of many influences weren't willing to go. After all, no one wanted to be made a fool by others. However, since this was the order of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, no one dared to not go. But as they approached the Hidden Dragon Galaxy, all of these Empyreans were slowly silenced. This was because when they spread their sense to the surrounding areas of the Hidden Dragon Galaxy, they discovered that there were human spirit ships in the vicinity. It's a human fleet. Did Lin Ming really come? What are the humans thinking? They want one final battle? Many Saint martial artists were dumbfounded. The Hidden Dragon Galaxy covered an incredibly large area, but by relying on the positions of the human spirit ships, they found the approximate location of the talks. And as everyone saw what was before them, they were utterly shocked. In the distant starry skies, they could see a small planet floating about. This small planet was only several hundred miles in diameter. It was originally impossible for life to form on such a small planet, but it actually contained countless spirit trees and treasures of the heavens and earth. These spiritual plants all casually grew over the planet, and above it was a pavilion floating in the skies. This pavilion was far simpler. It only encompassed an area of several dozen feet, and sitting in it was a young man. This young man had extraordinary features and a temperament as ephemeral as dust. Just by sitting there, he was like a spear that shook the hearts of those who saw him. In front of this man was a long table. The young man sat at one end of the table, and on it was a pot of wine as well as several cups. As the many Saint race martial artists arrived, the man waved his hand in invitation. His gaze was directed at the Saint Palace in the skies, his eyes bright and shining as if he could pierce through the palace walls and array formations to see the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. Lin Ming. It's really him. Many Saint Empyreans had seen Lin Ming before, and even if they hadn't, they had at least looked at his portrait. This man sitting there was undoubtedly Lin Ming. They never imagined that not only would Lin Ming show up, but he would also be sitting there so calmly, as if he were attending a gathering with friends. It's not just Lin Ming that came, but many human Empyreans are also here. They are in full battle array not too far away. The human spirit ships were here. As long as they traced back the position of the spirit ships, it wasn't difficult to find that there were over 20 human Empyreans standing nearby. These human Empyreans were all high-level figures of humanity. If Lin Ming as well as so many other Empyreans died here, then humanity's fate could be imagined. What is happening? Aren't they afraid that they will die here? Maybe the Spiritas are involved. Doubt flashed in the hearts of many Saint martial artists. But at this time, someone discovered Lin Ming's cultivation. Although there was a great distance separating them, when facing Lin Ming, they felt as if they were facing the endless starry skies. A powerful suppressive feeling fell over them. The closer they approached, the stronger this feeling became. Many Empyreans felt their breath catch in their throats. Moreover, even when Lin Ming casually moved, his movements seemed to contain indescribable concepts within, making them impossible to discern. True divinity. He actually broke into true divinity. It's only been 2,000 years, how is this possible? Many Saint martial artists were panic-stricken. They never thought that in such a short period of time, Lin Ming would manage to break into true divinity. True divinity. Fairy Blue Lotus took in a deep breath. Lin Ming's speed of growth was far too fast, so fast that she couldn't muster the courage to take him as a goal. She couldn't help but glance at her master. Soaring Feather God King had once fought with Lin Ming in the past, and was likely the most qualified one here to estimate him. Soaring Feather God King's eyes sparkled. She was also incomparably amazed. Strange, if Lin Ming could break through so quickly, he surely must have had a fortuitous encounter. But, I cannot imagine just what sort of fortuitous encounter can arrive at this level. His breakthrough is too fast. I wonder what his foundation and strength are like, Astral Vault God King commented from beside Soaring Feather God King. He licked his lips, looking forwards more and more to today's events. True Divinity Lin Ming against the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. The Saint Race Spirit ships all paused before the small planet. Many Saint martial artists were completely silent. As they looked at Lin Ming in the distance, dread and awe filled their eyes. Lin Ming hadn't laid down his hand yet, he was still reaching out in an invitational gesture. At this time, a hearty laugh echoed out from the Good Fortune Saint Palace. Extraordinary, truly extraordinary. You actually broke into true divinity. No wonder you found the courage to face me. This voice was faintly indifferent, but it rolled forwards like a thunderstorm, resounding through the universe. A middle-aged man in golden robes stepped out from the Good Fortune Holy Palace. With just a few steps, he fell atop the small planet where Lin Ming was. This man was the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. At this time, he was only 100 feet away from Lin Ming. For true divinity-level masters, this distance was no different from being face to face. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's eyes blazed as he looked at Lin Ming, an incomprehensibly happy expression on his face. Did you think that you could fight me after you broke into true divinity? For your cultivation to grow so quickly, you likely entered some sort of special time enchantment where the flow of time can be increased without twisting the laws so that a martial artist can safely cultivate within? The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's words left the Saint martial artist stunned. This sort of time enchantment was exceedingly rare. Only a small number of people here had ever heard of something similar. The cultivation that one gained from bitterly secluding themselves in such a time enchantment was different from the cultivation which one gained from adventuring outwards and living through all sorts of slaughters. Even though both could be considered growth through fortuitous encounters, the combat efficiency developed through both methods were on completely different levels. This was just like a flower cultivated in a greenhouse compared to the weeds that withstood the harsh weather outside. If Lin Ming had used 2,000 years of time and entered into such a time enchantment to rapidly increase his cultivation, then breaking into true divinity wouldn't be strange. Thinking of this, many Saint Empyreans felt much more relaxed. In these sorts of special ancient time enchantments, the flow of time wouldn't be too ridiculously exaggerated. 2,000 years would be around 10,000 to 20,000 years. With this in consideration, Lin Ming's breakthrough was within reason. After all, his potential and foundation were evident to all. But to become a true divinity in a time enchantment, in particular when jumping past several small Empyrean boundaries, it was inevitable that one's laws and strength would be influenced.